Hi everyone, my name's Mad Matt Lugos and welcome back to Mass Effect. So this is the post-game discussion, post-game chat video. There's going to be lots of different stuff in here as I kind of try and gather all my thoughts about this massive experience that I've just finished. So just to plot out the whole video, I'll leave timestamps down below. What's going to happen is I'm going to play through the three other endings. So obviously I chose synthesis in the actual playthrough. I've been talking to all you guys in the comments just about all the different endings, and I was a bit unsure at the end whether I made the right decision, or not right decision, but I'm not sure. I just felt very conflicted. But I'm just gonna reload and play through the control ending, the destroy ending, and the abstain ending, I guess. I don't know, the one where you do none of them anyway. I'll give my thoughts on all of them, have a little chat about all the different endings, what I feel like might have been my best in hindsight. Maybe I overthought things in the moment, and all the other influences. After that, we're going to look at the original endings, the ones that caused all the supposed controversy when the game originally released. I'll check those out. I'll have to watch a video of them, obviously. I'm going to check out the teaser trailer for the new unreleased Mass Effect game, Mass Effect 4 or whatever it's going to be called. I'm actually going to watch the trailer for Mass Effect Andromeda as well, just so I can get a bit of a sense and share my thoughts on that. After that, we're going to do the Q&A in a community post. I asked you guys to leave all different kinds of questions about what I think about the series, so I'm going to go through all of the Q&A, which will hopefully encompass kind of everything that I think about the game, its story, its characters, everything that I've enjoyed so far. So there'll be a lot of cuts, obviously, because I have to reload right at the beginning of the Citadel mission, so at least I get to shoot the elusive man again. So I'll just cut back to the actual choice screen whenever we get there. Alright guys, I'll see you in those. Alright guys, it is time to take control. That's the one we're going to do first. We're going to hobble our way over to the left-hand choice here. I listened through the whole cutscene again with the AI. Interesting about, I'd forgotten about the AI saying about synthesis being the ultimate evolution of all life. I'm not sure that that's true. I mean, I'm sure you could create some kind of hybrid, organic, synthetic creature anyway. This is the ending I'm most interested in because I feel like maybe there were aspects of it I didn't really think about in the moment. I did consider it heavily, but I don't think I thought about certain facets of it that you guys have brought up. And the self-sacrifice element, the controlling of the Reapers, everyone staying alive as a result. I guess we have to trust that our synthetic self will make the right decisions, and I believe that this is influenced by our Paragon and Renegade stuff as well, as to what kind of AI, what kind of Reaper we will be. Here we go, Shepard. I'll miss you, Liara. But we're not coming back.
wreckage and get the hell out of here.
Joker, it's time to go.
Damn it.
Okay, the blue ending. This one's sponsored by Intel. And the Asari, I guess. Okay, so that was largely the same. Obviously, we've not got the synth leaves here. From where the Normandy's landing, I guess. So we're going to need some kind of echo of Shepherd, right? In a Reaper or something. That's what I'm guessing. Okay, I definitely didn't give enough thought to that because I think it was because...
Eternal. Infinite. Immortal. The woman I was used these words. But only now do I truly understand them. And only now do I understand the full extent of her sacrifice. Through her death, I was created. Through my birth, her thoughts are freed. They guide me now. Give me reason. Direction. Just as she gave direction to the ones who followed her. The ones who helped her achieve her purpose. Now my purpose. To give the many hope for a future. To ensure that all have a voice in their future. The woman I was knew that she could only achieve this by becoming something greater. There is power in control. There is wisdom in harnessing the strengths of your enemy. I will rebuild what the many have lost. I will create a future with limitless possibilities. I will protect and sustain.
Uh-oh.
I will act as guardian for the many. And throughout it all, I will never forget. I will remember the ones who sacrificed themselves so that the many could survive. And I will watch over the ones who live on. Those who carry the memory of the woman I once was. The woman who gave up her life to become the one who could save the many.
Okay, I actually really like that. I liked that a lot more than the synthesized. See if the ends credit thing is the same. I think it is.
Did that all really happen?
Yes, but some of the details have been lost in time.
Yeah, he sounds less synthetic
it all
now, though.
happened so very long ago.
When can I go to the stars?
One day, my sweet.
What will be there?
Anything you can imagine. Our galaxy has billions of stars. Each of those stars could have many worlds. Every world could be home to a different form of life.
No, he still sounds synthetic.
And every life is a special story of its own.
Tell me another story about the shepherd.
It's getting late, but okay, one more story.
Wow. That had a lot of different elements to it that I actually really, really liked. The kind of chilling of the, you know, the slightly deeper double voice, the synthetic sounding shepherd voice made it sound sinister at first. It definitely has dangerous elements to it. You know, being a god, essentially being a god, essentially. Being immortal. And you have to think that, I guess, a lot of human emotions will be carried in, right? It's our mind, Shepard's mind has gone into this, into Reaper form. So, you know, what is the communication like between her and the other Reapers? The Reapers are more like, the other Reapers don't necessarily have much personal agency, right? Would they need to be liberated for that to happen? There are a lot of difficult questions that come up with that, but I do really like it just because it leaves, I think that leaves the galaxy in the closest state to freedom without somebody just getting wiped out like the Geth would be, right? But I haven't seen the other ending yet, so it's weird seeing Shepard again straight away after that, right? Yeah, that got me a bit emotional, right? Because there's definitely a sad element to Shepard in that whole self-sacrifice. You know, because she's kind of resigned to endless loneliness in a lot of ways now, right? I'm sure, I don't know, there'd be a way to transfer the consciousness in some way, but then I guess you'd lose control of the Reapers. Maybe you'd need to duplicate Shepard. I don't know. That it is very tricky, but what I'll do is, guys, I'm going to have to play through that whole ending sequence again to get back to it to watch the destroy ending. But I'll pass comment on all the endings after I've been through them. So I'll see you again in a second. Destroy, guys. It's time to destroy. Oh man, I'm not sure I'm ready for this. With the Geth and Edie, I think this is going to get a bit emotional. I think this is going to get very emotional. I don't want to see what it does to Joker. Oh god. Just, yeah, I did originally think that this would be the most pragmatic thing, but in hindsight, thinking about all the effort we put into salvaging peace with the Geth, all the effort we've put into helping Edie realise her sense of self, how the Geth would help the Quarians to adjust to living on a real world again. I'm about to sneeze. No, it's gone. It's gone. I think. I can mute it in post. It's fine. Yeah, I think those reasons are just making this feel very gut-wrenching now, after seeing the control ending at least. Okay, we're locked in now. Oh, I've got to shoot, right. Was it Anderson in the Flash, in the bit where we got shown this? I think it was, right? I guess we die from this as well, right? Wait, did you guys tell me otherwise? I can't remember. Oh, ED. Oh, this is gonna hurt, man. Yeah, I think we're dead.
All fleets, the Crucible is armed. Disengage and head to the rendezvous point. I repeat, disengage and get the hell out
Joker,
of here.
I'm sorry.
Joker, it's time to go.
Damn it.
Yeah, they just all explode, right? Gives a more definitive end to the soldiers on the ground, I suppose. Well, they've not blown up, they've just been shut down. Doesn't this create a problem for all the ships though? Because didn't the AI say all like technology would be kind of shut down temporarily, kind of like an EMP? The red ending, sponsored by AMD. Or the Labour Party, you could see it that way. Oh, ED, man. I don't think I'm going to be able to take this. No, Javik.
The war is over. The Reapers have been defeated. Against all odds, and in the face of the greatest threat this galaxy has ever known, we survived. We suffered many losses. The relays are severely damaged, but we won. This victory belongs to each of us. Every man, woman, and child. Every civilization on every world. Now, as we take our first steps toward restoring what we lost, we must remember what it took to win. This wasn't a victory by a single fleet, a single army, or even a single species. If this war has taught us anything, it is that we are at our strongest when we work together. And if we can put down our grievances long enough to stop something as powerful as the Reapers, imagine what we can achieve now that they are defeated. It will take time, but we can rebuild everything that was destroyed. Our homes, our worlds, our fleets and defenses, all of this and more. Together, we can build a future greater than any one of us could imagine. A future paid for by the sacrifices of those who fought and died alongside us. A future that many will never see.
Yeah, we died as well.
And while we still have many challenges ahead of us, we can face them together. And we will honor those who died to give us that future.
And what about the Geth? We're not even going to get a hint about that? Really? Okay, I guess we're alive. That's a bit weird, considering the Citadel, if it had been completely shut down, there would be no oxygen at all.
Did that all really happen?
Yes, child.
Yes, but some of the details have been lost in time. It all happened so very long ago.
When can I go to the stars?
One day, my sweet.
You can't
will be
visit
there?
stars, kid. Who's educating this lad?
Anything you can imagine.
You visit planets,
Our
not
galaxy
stars.
has billions of stars.
And you can't visit any of them. You
Each
visit
of
planets.
those stars could have many worlds. Every world could be home to a different form of life.
Not every single one.
And
What
every
about-
life is a special story of
What
its
about
own.
hydrogen helium gas giants? There's no life on them.
Tell me another story about the shepherd.
It's getting late, but okay. One more story.
Yes. Alright. All right. I definitely feel like that ending was... The tone of it was manipulated away from the dangerous... From the morose aspects of it. They didn't show the Geth, they didn't show Edie. Yeah, that definitely felt like a weird tone, given the implications that we knew were there with the Destroy ending. That definitely feels like
Commander.
a little strange, because the tone was the tone didn't quite match what we knew had happened. I feel like, you know, just Edie, one of the like principal characters of the whole third game and the second game as well, obviously, and the whole all the Geth, but, you know, there was no even look at them, and yeah, so I'm not sure how to feel about that. On the one hand, the fresh start element is great. The Reapers just being gone, and the idea of controlling the evolutionary cycle and everything is just you should just leave it alone, right? I feel like the one thing that definitely interested me from what the AI said after I watched it back I didn't watch it back that time. I skipped over most of that time, but for the control one, because, you know, it was nice to go through it again. She said the AI said about chaos, right? And it's worth remembering that the evolution itself is chaos, right? That there is a purpose to evolution, but it comes about by very chaotic and non-specific means, and it takes a long time to happen most of the time, or at least with humans it does. So the idea of trying to control that really is kind of subverting the evolutionary process, the evolutionary cycle. And I mean, one of my principal beliefs, not principal beliefs that I live my life on, but one of my beliefs in terms of where do I think evolution would go, I definitely think synthetic consciousness, you know, not transcendence, but like the singularity almost, is like the next step in human evolution, at least. Like that will be the next step, and then we'll be left behind essentially. But I guess you would think that an artificial intelligence, it's not just going to be like when we evolved in the past, where it's Darwinism and we just killed off the Neanderthals, or they just, well, I suppose that we didn't just kill them off. There was war, I guess, between humans and, yeah, it wasn't, was it humans? I can't, was that the next step? Whatever. Anyway, they tend to wipe out the next one, but it's not just through pure warfare or fighting or whatever. It's they get outbred, they can't compete for food and resources and stuff, and then they just gradually die out. But in terms of artificial, I think that they would just supersede us, and then but because they would be such intelligent beings, they might just leave us be, right? As long as we're not trying to actively kill them like the Quarians were with the Geth, the coexistence could be possible between intelligent creatures who have a grasp of morality and ethics and all that kind of stuff, right? So I've rambled on a tangent so far that I don't know what my original point was. Chaos and evolution. So I like this ending in that sense, because the whole Guardians of the Galaxy aspect of the control ending is gone. Everything's left to be its chaotic self, and things will just work themselves out, right? Doesn't always have to be about dominance. I mean, that's definitely one aspect of the synthesis ending that I quite liked, because the synthesis ending has a femininity about it, if that makes sense. And I mean that in the sense that sometimes stories can be seen through a certain lens, like more of a masculine lens or more of a feminine lens. I don't mean male or female necessarily. I mean, masculine and feminine are things that can be in men or women. I just mean, things like dominance and the inevitability of conflict and territorialism and all that kind of stuff are very masculine ideas. But then like collaboration and unity and like the consistent collaboration and kind of equality of a lot of things is a much more feminine thing, kind of a Mother Nature style of things. So the synthesis ending has that element to it, right, where everyone is interconnected, everyone has been altered in a way that makes everyone equal and reduces the need for conflict, right? Whereas I feel like the control ending has that dominance aspect to it in a way, but also it ultimately comes down to the agency of Shepard as an AI, which is both good and bad, because a person is not a consistent thing, right? They will change, and you have to imagine that a Shepard trapped inside a Reaper might become bitter, estranged, lonely, jaded, jealous of all the organics getting to live their lives, getting to live and die and not be existing in perpetuity. You would think that Shepard might become disconnected. And when people feel that way, often they might seek to change things. So that's the ultimate danger of the control ending. Maybe, but I don't know, maybe Shepard would be able to just destroy all the Reapers herself, or himself. Yeah, I think in terms of what I like, I think I personally, thinking about this, after having seen all that, I feel like the tone of the Destroy ending was a little off, considering the destruction of the Geth, Edie dying, and the kind of weird technical aspect of, well, if it was going to shut down all technology, wouldn't that have shut down every ship and all the technology and everything, and everyone on board a starship would have just suffocated because the technology would have been turned off? I suppose they said that it could be turned back on, but I feel like it was definitely coloured a little bit away from the sinister side of it, whereas I feel like the control ending definitely had some sinister undertones present in that, just in the tone of it, the way that they coloured Shepard's voice. But I mean, they tailed it off positive because the normal human voice came back, And I suppose, obviously, the Destroy ending, we've got the hint of Shepard being alive at the end, which I don't know if that was really necessary. That definitely, in terms of what might come in the future, in terms of what Bioware will have to consider the canon ending, because whether if they're gonna, I don't know if their Shepard is planned to be back. You would like them to maybe move on to a new lead, a new protagonist. But if they plan to bring Shepard back, because you have to think that EA is going to play a part in this. And what these big executive companies, if the film industry has taught us anything, it's that they don't want to risk new IPs. And even though Mass Effect is its own IP and it will sell regardless of who the lead character is, they want surefire dollars, don't they? They want to know that it's going to sell, and putting Shepard back in is a way of them saying, well, Shepard was the protagonist of the last games. The last games were incredibly popular and well received in most avenues. We're going to bring Shepard back. And what ending brings Shepard back? Well, it's the Destroy ending. But obviously we've seen in Mass Effect 2 there would be other ways of doing it. There would maybe be a way of copying Shepard's consciousness or retransferring it back into a synthetic body, into an organic body or a synthetic body. I mean, but obviously the synthesis and control endings, our body was completely disintegrated, so that wouldn't be possible. A new body would need to be created, but they can always sci-fi explain their way around that. So I suppose they could. I feel like the synthesis ending. But what my original point was is, what would they consider the canon ending to lead into a sequel? So I really don't think you can have synthesis as a canon ending at all, just because everybody is too harmonious, it's too non-specific. It's a decent ending in some ways for the reasons I said about it being like the harmony and everything, but it's only an acceptable ending if you never make another Mass Effect game, because there's no way you can write around that. The only way you could write around that would be to completely dumb it down, to say that, and you know, there's so many little details of that. Like, how the hell does that work? How is your DNA part synthetic? Like, how does that work? Like, are my organs going to go rusty from time to time? I mean, I don't know, how is that going to work? And in terms of that distinction, like, between synthetic and organic, it really means nothing in terms of if it was DNA, because if it's your DNA, it can't be synthetic, right? If it's your DNA, then it is organic. Do you know what I mean? Synthetic means it's been like man-made or person-made or Turian-made, whichever, right? So that would kind of rule that distinction out. Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one. I feel like that yeah, it's definitely weird that it's woolly. It's what I'd call woolly. The synthesis ending. It's just it has a nice sentiment, I guess, but if you think about it too much, it kind of falls apart at the seams a bit. Which is kind of how I'm starting to feel about it in some ways. So, you know, it's like when I was at university, right? When I did psychology at university, when we got to choose different modules in our final year, like, I was dead set on of the three, one of them I was doing consciousness. I wanted to study about consciousness, and a friend of mine, she always was like, well, there's no point because it's a really woolly subject that doesn't have any kind of tangible means of study. It's all philosophy and conjectural at the time. And I was like, no, but it's so interesting. And that's kind of how I feel about the synthesis ending, where it's cool in way, and it's bad in the sense of the consent. The whole consent issue is a major problem with it that you guys brought up that I didn't think of when I was making the decision at the time, just forcing this on everyone. And like, one of you brought Javik up, who's very anti-synthetics and all that kind of stuff. So Javik would throw that ending out the airlock, obviously. So yeah, all those aspects, but yeah, it's a bit woolly. So I don't think they would ever consider that as a canon ending. Control is definitely interesting. If they were going to create a new character, a new protagonist, for Mass Effect 4, if it's even called that. You have the Reapers as a distant presence, right? I just don't know how you tie that into a big story when you have this fleet of all-conquering robots who can just win you any battle possible. They would need to write a way around that, so maybe the canon ending will end up being destroy, but maybe they can find a way around the Geth and Edie and all that stuff. Because I don't think they're going to throw away those storylines like that. I'm not sure. So, I think honestly, the ending I like the most. I know I've not watched the 4th ending. I'm not going to watch that now. I can't. I don't have enough time. I can't play through all that sequence again. We just let them win, right? We just let the cycle complete. So, you guys have explained that to me. It's not a major ending. It's like a secret ending. I might watch a video of that with the other stuff. But of the 3 main endings, I like the Control ending the most, I have to say. There's obvious dangerous implications with the Reapers still being around. Our perspective might change, not being organic anymore, being estranged from our people. But in terms, we sacrificed ourselves. The Geth and Edie and all the other potential synthetics stayed alive. And that benefits the Quarians, is right? One of you explained to me. Everything will progress much faster. All of the civilizations that were preserved in each main Reaper are still there, right? There'll be the Protheans will have been preserved in one of them. All their culture and all their knowledge will not have been for nothing, and that's important, right? The Destroy ending wipes all that out, as well as the Geth and Edie. There are all those cultures that have been preserved from cycle after cycle that will be gone. And they helped build the Crucible. They helped get us here, whether we like it or not. So I think in that sense, the Control ending is good, but how do we even harvest that knowledge in a way? How do we... And have it like questions about, is there a way for us to emancipate the Reapers individually? Or can you even consider them entities within themselves? Like, we know that their voices are so overwhelming from what the Geth have said, from what Legion told us. So, yeah, I think I prefer the Control ending, ironically, after it being the one I preferred the least while making the decision itself, but having seen it, I definitely prefer it. We actually had to sacrifice ourselves, but I don't know what they would believe to be the canon ending. Okay, so those are my thoughts on the endings, guys. Fascinating stuff. I'm sure you guys will tell me. A lot of you have been in favour of Destroy, a few in favour of Control, a few in favour of Synthesis. So it's definitely split, and credit to them for that, because there's not any clear-cut way. But the one caveat, I think, to this is that Destroy is the only one that's possible for Shepard to seemingly still be alive. Maybe the dog tag moved in the rubble. Maybe we were still dead. But, Cerberus brought us back from the dead, so... No one's ever really dead anymore, unless you set them on fire or something. So, yeah. What we'll do now, I'm going to have a look at the original endings, then we'll have a look at the trailers for Mass Effect 4, Mass Effect Andromeda, and we'll have a chat and a reaction with them. Okay, right. So what I've done, I've had a look at the original talk with the AI and seeing how that differs. So obviously there weren't the explore options to ask about the Crucible, the Leviathans, the Reapers themselves, and all that extra stuff. The endings weren't explained as much in detail. So that was interesting. I don't think it seemed drastically different in terms of how it was set up. It was just a little more opaque, I suppose. They weren't explained as well. And the Control ending showed a clip of the Elusive Man grabbing the things, just like the Destroy ending showed a picture of Anderson shooting up the conduit. Also, I just wanted to show you how many evil bald guys there really could be in the world, guys. Look at all these evil bald guys. We will take over the world. Right, so I found this one video that shows the kind of ending sequences side by side. But they definitely had a similar tone. They just weren't explained as conclusively. But yeah, let's check them out. Sorry if this doesn't look right because this is in 1080p and the video will be in 1440, so integer scaling and all that. Obviously this will have different cut-ins, right, for the characters from this person's playthrough. So at the minute they're pretty much the same, right? I think you guys said that the narration is a different point, is a different thing. That there isn't any narration. It just kind of goes to the credits. The AI specifically mentioned the Geth dying. But yeah, it is a little bit of a cop-out in some ways how this particular bit of ending is, they're just the same with a slightly different colour wash, right? So I imagine, but you guys said that the narrated bit was the bit that wasn't in. That definitely adds a lot, I think. So I guess I have to imagine if it was just this. And then you replayed them all and all the difference was blue, green and yellow, right? And that the AI said that the mass relays would be destroyed whichever one you chose, right? But the Citadel is preserved in the control ending. Yeah, that makes it look like the Normandy got destroyed. Oh, no. So where does it end? You see them get out of the ship. Right, okay. And we can see the computer chips on the leaves there. Or the circuitry or whatever stupid thing it was. I definitely like that visual of Edie and Jeff. Javik came out in the Destroy ending and I mustn't have noticed when I watched it the first time. Blue, green and red. Intel, Nvidia, AMD. And then this bit was the same, I think. Yeah.
Did that all really happen?
Yeah,
Yes,
thank you
but
to
some of
this
the
person's
details
channel
have been lost in time.
for the video.
It all happened so
I don't think he's
very
making
long
videos anymore.
ago.
If this was uploaded 9 years ago and
When can
he's got
I go
80
to the stars?
subscribers.
One day, my sweet.
What will be
Okay, so without that narration bit, that would have been
Anything you
extremely
can imagine.
frustrating.
Our galaxy has billions of Each of those
It's
stars.
it's the exact same
have
ending
many
with a different
worlds.
color tone, right? Except in the synthesis
Every
one,
world
there's
could be
no,
home
in the
to a
control
different
ending,
form of life.
the Citadel
every life
is preserved. In
special
all the other
story
endings,
of
everything
its
else
own.
is the same, except for that bit with Edie in the synthesis
Tell me
ending.
another story about the Shepherd.
There must have been some specific thing with the destroy
It's
ending that was
getting
different.
late, but
Yeah,
okay,
that is bad. That is
one
really
more
bad.
Story.
I suppose the oh god, you guys are seeing my YouTube recommendations. Yeah, that would have been awful. That would have been awful. Because you have absolutely no context for any of them, right? The extended cut endings all have the narrated bit that drastically change that actually give you some specifics to what has happened for the various endings. Yeah, that is awful. I guess the biggest problem I think that they created for themselves was having the end be a choice at all. Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying that this would have been better, but for example, like in The Witcher 3, for example, the ending you get is fixed depending on the choices that you've made. At least the Ciri aspect of the ending depends on the choices that you've made, right? And so there is no choice at the end, right? So I feel like it might have been a better idea for the ending to be already decided by how you've played through the game. Now, obviously, because the Paragon Renegade system is a binary system with only two aspects to it, that makes it more difficult to incorporate a third or fourth ending. Maybe if you had like a 50-50 or 60-40 split, then a middle ending would get reached, but that might have been an easier way to create drastically different endings, right? Rather than giving you just an outright choice. I do realize that I think you couldn't get some of the endings depending on your Paragon Renegade score or your war assets. I think you guys explained. But yeah, that's essentially red, blue, green endings, which is that's just tragic, isn't it? To end a series like this on that would have been. I'm just imagining what it would have felt like after. I think I'm clocked at like 220 hours with Legendary Edition through all three games. After all that, and some of you would have waited years in between each release when you were, if you started with the first game, you would have just. You would have been fuming. You would have been frothing at the mouth at that ending. Okay, now I've not seen the Refusal ending, so sure, let's check this out. Oh, don't give me ads. I'm gonna have to mute that. That's copyright claims. No, leave me alone. Oh, I'm supporting the channel. This channel.
Your time is at an end. You must decide.
No.
Oh, damn it.
Freedom.
Sorry.
Mine.
Your time is at an end. You must decide.
God, this is terrible quality, friend.
I'm gonna end this war on my terms.
Then you will die knowing that you failed to save everything you fought for.
I fight for freedom. Mine and everyone's. I fight for the right to choose our own fate. And if I die, I'll die knowing that I did everything I could to stop you. And I'll die free.
So be it.
Whoa.
The cycle continues.
That is horrible. In a, everyone's dead kind of horrible. Oh, but this is life being reborn.
If you're hearing this,
Yeah,
there is still
no
hope.
way.
Hope that you can avoid the same mistakes we made.
The time capsule.
We fought the Reapers, but we failed to stop them. We did everything we could. We built the Crucible, but it didn't work. We fought as a united galaxy, but it wasn't enough. I only hope the information in this capsule is enough to help you before it's too late. My name is Dr. Liara Tassoni. Herein lies the recounting of our war with the Reapers.
Wow. You can kind of tell that that was a little more rushed, obviously. How does this still get the people talking at the end? Ah, new races. That's
Did
interesting.
that all really happen?
We'll never know exactly what it was like, but yes, the archives tell the
Samara?
true story of those who came before us. They fought a terrible war, so we wouldn't have to.
And that's why we have peace.
That's the
Yes.
same child's voice.
Without everything they accomplished, without the information they passed down, we too would be threatened.
What else do we know about the Shepherd?
Just what we have in the archives. But I've only told you a few of the stories.
Can you tell me another one? Please?
It's getting late, but okay. One more story.
That's interesting. Okay, maybe I should have looked at that one myself then. Sorry, patience isn't my strongest suit at times. Alright, that's actually interesting. I mean, this little bit at the end kind of colours it a bit differently because it tells us that the next cycle was successful. But we don't have any specifics. We don't know if the next cycle had the same interaction with the child, with the AI, and picked one of the other three options themselves. So we don't really know any specifics. You can tell it was a bit of an Easter eggy ending without much specifics to it. So yeah, it's cool, but it's a bonus ending. It's not. I don't think they put as much effort into it. It seems. It's cool that it's there though. I quite like the idea that we were all doomed anyway. All right. We're going to check out the trailers for Mass Effect 4 and Mass Effect Andromeda now. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to watch the launch trailers for all of the games in the series. So we've got Mass Effect 1, 2, 3, Andromeda, and then the next Mass Effect, whatever it's going to be called. So forgive the resolution here. I'm going to get copyright claimed. Oh, it doesn't matter. Bioware. Microsoft. Not since Star Wars has there been a universe so full of wonder and awe, Game Informer. The Normandy. Shepard. Anderson. This is such a 2000s trailer. Saren. Shepard. Chokeholds. What is your humanity worth? What are you willing to sacrifice? Ashley, probably. This is a major spoiler. What the hell? That's such a spoiler. Never watch trailers, man. Oh, I'm about to watch trailers. God. Annihilation is one decision away. Explosions. Sunrises. Lens flares. Mass Effect. I apologize for my narration. And it was an Xbox exclusive, right? Okay. Alright, that was the first... man, the first game was great, wasn't it? I mean, the first game was just great. It really was. They were all great, but just thinking back, I'm already... Even though I only played it like 3-4 months ago, I'm getting nostalgia. Yeah, it's just the mystery of it, and the Geth, some of the Geth enemy variety was pretty cool. Like the crawly Geth, I forgot what they were called. Man, they should have kept those things. They were cool. Like they crawled on the walls. They could have made Legion one of those guys. That would have been awesome. Made him like, I'll give it verticality to the levels. Okay. Sorry for the narration, but I can't help it. Sorry for the resolution. You know, these trailers are old. Bioware. Mass relays. EA, it's not in the game. Ashley. Why can't he say humanity properly? Humanity. It's like he's talking about sheep. Humanity. A you. Mass Effect 2 was simply awe-inspiring, breathtaking, outer space epic. See, humanity, not humanity. Harbinger. Bit of Jack previews. Tali. And do they not even put FemShep in the trailers? Jacob in his little arms. So much spoilery. So much spoilers, man. This is why you shouldn't watch trailers. Why am I doing this? There's like endgame missions in this trailer. This is just crazy. Yeah, this is 100% copyright claim. I'm sorry if I mute this. Yeah, Mordin. Oh god, romance spoilers? I mean... Yeah. Great. Showed us the enemy, a bit of Reaper stuff. Join the fight, January 26th of January, 29th in Europe. No one cares about you. Okay, yeah, this is why you don't watch trailers, man. I'm going to admit I'm a bit apprehensive about watching this next Mass Effect thing. Okay, Mass Effect 3. We got the feels music from the ending. Bioware. EA. It's not in the game.
There's a lot of people back on Earth dying while we gather our strength.
James, if you're not a fan, now's the time to start.
We're coming back. Friends, family,
kids you can't save. Bigger, more intense, and even sexier.
This isn't their fight.
Jessica
But they're buying us
Chobot.
time with their lives. We need to stand together. The Reapers won't stop at Earth.
Man, so spoilers galore here, man. Enemy spoilers. Edie. Still no FemShep? Really? War! War! Man, so many spoilers, man. Fire. Look at these spoilers, man. This is insane. Don't watch trailers, man. None of us should watch trailers ever. Oh, there's more. DLC? No. Man, just don't watch trailers. Oh, I can't believe I just said that. Okay, now we're approaching modern territory. We've got 1440p res. Now I'm gonna regret watching this, but I won't have any context for it, so it'll probably exit my brain. But so many spoilers, man. I went yeah, trailers are so dangerous.
We dream of exploring the unknown, discovering what lies beyond.
This is the launch trailer, okay, so it might be less
The entire
spoiled.
initiative is at risk. None of the Golden Worlds panned out.
Golden
They're a
Worlds.
bust. We need to find more resources, but that takes people,
Whoa.
and we can't wake them up. Now more than
Graphics.
ever, we need a pathfinder.
Oh, the music, why? I'm gonna have to mute this. Nice. Still with a sorry. When was this trailer? 2017. Okay, so this would have been 5 years after the end of the third game. Such a shame that they messed it up in a way that they didn't embark on a new trilogy, right? But yeah, I guess it's, I probably had to mute that. That was probably copyrighted. But yeah. So new new galaxy, the Andromeda Galaxy. New enemy, a more ground level kind of enemy, less cataclysmic, probably. Maybe the dominant species in their galaxy. I guess we have no right to move in, I suppose. That's interesting. Doesn't spoil much for me without context, I suppose. Alright, let's watch the Mass Effect 4 one. Okay, the next Mass Effect teaser trailer. So hopefully, because it's in very early development, I expect, there won't be many spoilers here. I hope. One would hope.
We know now that in the early years of the 20th century, this world was being watched.
Roger, copy. Eagle Houston, you're a go for landing, over.
Arcturus station. Unknown vessel approaching.
Arcturus, unknown vessel? Oh, this is like a recalling of the history. Okay. Okay, thanks. Waste our time. We want the new stuff. That noise, still get the chills.
We've lost contact. Do not be reading all control in space.
No way. Come on now. Liara, I recognise those eyebrows. Looking, she was a lot older. We'll continue. Okay. Okay, we gotta rewatch. I've got to rewatch that. I'm going to be silent this time.
That in the early years of the 20th century, this world was being watched.
Okay, so this is like a recounting of the timeline.
Eagle Houston, you're a go for landing, over.
Okay, I'm going to pause this a little bit.
We need first contact protocol.
First contact, so this was Turian's first contact war.
Hawk 6 is away. Godspeed.
This is the ending of the third game, the mass relay.
We've lost contact.
Lost contact, yeah.
Anomaly readings all across space.
Oh, that implies that the destroy ending is going to be treated as canon, right? This is Liara's expedition. Damn it. Okay, so look here, this looks like a Reaper. Or it could be the Citadel. No, there's a Reaper in the background. There's a Reaper in the background for sure. Liara's got a few wrinkles. Whoa, 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 whoa. Look in the background. There's a Solarian, a Krogan, and a human in the background. Okay, so for her to have wrinkles, I'm just saying, for Liara to Sony to have wrinkles when she's only like 90 years old in the original games, this would need to be 1,000 years in the future, right? 1,000. Given Asari lifespan. For her to have wrinkles like this, because Benezia didn't even really have wrinkles. Doesn't tell us anything, man. Okay, that doesn't really tell us anything, does it? But okay. Liara's still there. I guess that's hinting at Shepard coming back, but you know, we haven't got a hint at an enemy, at a plot line or anything. The destruction of the mass relays, I think that implies the destroy ending would be considered canon, but there might be a way of them incorporating all three. There's no way they could incorporate the synthesis ending. Absolutely no way. If they were going to do, you know, what ending you got carrying over. There's no way. They'll have to pick one. And if all the Reapers are down, that would imply destroy, because there was definitely a Reaper in the old background. There, that's a Reaper. That's a derelict Reaper in the background. The whole kind of finger like looking aspect of it. So either it's the control ending and somehow we were incapacitated. Maybe Shepard just decided to deactivate all the Reapers, including herself. Or this is maybe the Citadel and our body is here and it's being recovered at last. I'm not sure. Difficult to say. But if all the mass relays were destroyed, it would be reasonable to assume that the galaxy-wide travel would have been a massive obstacle to overcome if they couldn't reactivate the mass relays. So they would have needed to establish their own tech. They would need to, well, I don't know, because they've discovered mass effect fields, maybe they could create their own mass relays. It'd be but it would take a long time, right? Because they'd need to travel by normal FTL travel to each star system, each cluster, which would take a long time. So, yeah, there's not really any The only hint this gives is that Liara's still here and that Shepard might come back in some capacity, which is mad. But as I said before, EA as a business, if you think about, like why we see so many reboots in the film industry, is because these executives want guaranteed money. They want tried and trusted IPs with tried and trusted characters, right? So the fact that Liara's here, their metrics will show that she's one of the most favored characters, and the fact that they've hinted at Shepard here means that they want something that people have been shown to like, particularly after Andromeda. I don't know what happens in Andromeda, but obviously people maybe didn't take to whoever the character is called, the lead character is called. Interesting. So yeah, I will never watch any more trailers though, because the trailers for 1, 2, and 3 were chocked full of spoilers. Endgame mission cinematic spoilers, just crazy the kind of stuff they put in. This is why you shouldn't watch trailers, man, in my opinion. Like, you get the best experience going in really completely blind. The last thing I watched way too much trailer footage of was Cyberpunk 2077, and I haven't played that. I've played a lot of the prologue, but I indulged so much because I was so excited, and I still am. I still maintain that I will enjoy that game. All right. All right, guys. That's pretty much all of the alternatives and reaction stuff. I don't know how long this video is going to be. It could be really long. But we're going to get to the Q&A now, so I'll see you over at the Q&A in a moment. Guys, time to do a nice Q&A. This will hopefully merge into like a kind of review of everything that I think about the game, everything I enjoyed. So we'll do the Q&A first. I'll do anything that I feel like I haven't covered, I'll mention afterwards. And yeah, let's get started. I've got my nice little highlighter in pink here. Okay, Christopher asked, it might be interesting to look at some reviews from 2012-13, as well as to watch the original versions of the ending and contrast those with your feelings experiencing it almost a decade later. So I have read a few reviews. I don't want to necessarily drag through the reviews in too analytical way. I had a look at some reviews, IGN, PC Gamer, what's it called? It begins with a G. Anyway, but the other big gaming website. Now, generally speaking, I stopped reading and watching reviews from the big publications a long time ago. I feel like the whole kind of cycle of official video game reviews these days is kind of detrimental in the way that that these journalists get like such a short period of time pre-release to review these games. And I don't really think, and this isn't like a criticism of them, it's a criticism of the process. Like getting a game that's like a really long, deep RPG or something a week before release. Like, there's no way they're going to be able to review it in a comprehensive manner. They've got a deadline to work to. So I don't personally put much credence in those reviews. So I did read a few. Most of them were very glowing. A lot of 10 out of 10s, 9.5s, 9 out of 10s. So they only like fleetingly mention the endings, obviously, because their reviews need to be spoiler-free, I suppose. They try to be a bit objective about those things. But naturally, a lot of these reviews don't mention the things like that, like the original endings or the DLC practices of EA don't really factor into their scores, which is one thing I've always wanted them to do. Like the fact that like Javik is DLC, that should bring down the game like 1 or 2 whole points if you're actually operating on a score system, in my opinion. Because that's such flagrant like gouging of the fan base. But yeah, it seemed like it was very much. I mean, I having played this game now, I can definitely see the influence that Mass Effect as a whole series had on the next generation of games. Because this was the PS3, Xbox 360 era. This was just as the next generation was being released, right? As PS4 and Xbox One were being released. So yeah, I think 2013, right? And you could definitely see the influence on a lot of the other RPGs. Bit on The Witcher 3, bit on things like Horizon Zero Dawn's dialogue system, and other, lots of other RPGs. You can just see the influence of this on it in a lot of ways. from ways that the third game in particular was reviewed, seemed like there was a lot of praise for the more cinematic quality of it. And it's I think it's worth commenting, like looking back to the first game, and I'm sure this is one of the reasons why some people don't like how the series evolved. But you could definitely tell that maybe with EA's influence that they wanted to streamline it and make it more cinematic, make it a bit more linear, and kind of veer it away from an RPG. Some people will like that. A lot of people probably won't. And you can I definitely felt that from the first game. The first game did feel very different. But in that sense, you know, because this is like such a tightly woven trilogy, each game is going to feel very different because they're three parts of a singular arc almost, right? To do with the whole Reaper storyline. So I think that if you would have played these three originally, the ending would have definitely left a real sour taste. I can't remember how long you said it took them to add the extended cut endings, which were free DLC. Was it maybe 6 months? But the amount of like furore that would have created in that time on the internet would have been pretty next level. But yeah, obviously we watched the original endings and we saw how kind of lackluster they were, how interchangeable they were. And Sorelric, yeah, you were just telling me to definitely do that. So yeah, it definitely seemed like a market leader at the time. Big AAA experience. Okay, so we've got a few questions here from Spyros Trick. Okay, Spyros, so first question. Favorite characters and game of the trilogy? Or you could rank them if you want. Favorite characters. So I think you guys could probably guess my favorite characters. I mean, favorite characters would definitely be Mordin. Mordin would definitely be number one. He just has so much to him in the second game in particular, right? He had so much to bounce off of. He had serious points, he had playful points, he had serious like science points, he had about things that were interesting in that facet. He had more political ideas, and then you had the whole scenario with the genophage that made him maybe somewhat of a controversial character because of the role he played in that, depending on your view on the genophage, right? You might have seen him as a bit of a monster if you were really condemning of the genophage, but nothing's black and white in that sense. And we know that the genophage wasn't done out of a Machiavellian or villainous intent. It was done it was used as a weapon to stop a war, right? So yeah, Mordin was great. I really liked Legion. I loved Legion. It was devastating. I mean, obviously both of them died, so that's like the worst part. See, I loved Mordin just because he had so much detail to him. You really felt like you had a grasp of his moral compass, of his likes and dislikes, of his quirks, of his sense of humor. You had a real sense of that, and that's really what makes a character feel real. It's just the details, the small things that you pick up, and obviously in RPGs there's a lot of static conversation that you get that with, which but I really enjoy that. I like, that might not be the most that kind of that flies in the face of the kind of cinematic exposition that you have in like film and stuff, where you're always moving when you learn that kind of stuff. But it's a bit different in games and in RPGs in particular. And yeah, I really enjoyed his arc, and we knew that he had real struggle and we had real internal conflict, and that was a part of him that was really well realized in his missions, his side missions, in his dialogue, everything. He was just a fantastic character. It was just I wish we could have kept him alive, but yeah, I loved Mordin. Legion was in a very different sense. Legion just felt the emergence of him as a character, kind of alongside Edie as well. That they kind of had a nice contrast in terms of their developments. But Legion, he was like a baby almost, and I'm getting a bit sad talking about him because you really wanted to take care of him, and he was so precious in that sense, because he represented, when you think about one of the major plot points of this whole series, right, which was that there's no peace to be made between organics and synthetics, that the war is inevitable, that conflict is inevitable. The first time we get the real like a little light in the dark for that not being the case is Legion. I know we had Edie throughout the second game, but her consciousness was always wasn't necessarily it only really fully emerged as an individual towards the end of the second game, right? If I'm remembering right, or like more in the third game after the shackles were unbound. When were the shackles unbound in the second game? They were unbound in the second game, actually, weren't they? But it always had like that caveat of, you know, she had the controls of the Elusive Man and Cerberus on her that would maybe hold her back. But I think just because Legion had his own body, maybe that kind of made it seem more real, maybe to me than Edie, I suppose. He just felt like he felt so vulnerable because he was the only one. He was like the whole representation of the Geth as individual, as you know, real, conscious, sentient, sapient beings. And you just, I don't know if it was the same for you guys, but I just felt the immediate urge. Why are you trying to make me download drivers? I felt the immediate urge to protect him. And I know one of you told me that the whole little bit of N7 armor was something that they were forced to add in, that the writer didn't want to add into Legion's story, but I actually kind of liked that, because it made him have something that he had or liked that he didn't really understand about himself, which added a little bit of mystery to his personality, which I really liked. And he was great. Obviously Liara was great. I really enjoyed Liara's character arc throughout all three games. She had noticeable changes in her personality, her roles, her kind of overall character from the first game to the third. She really changed. You know, we first meet her as this kind of shy, awkward scientist or archaeologist or whatever it was, and you know, she'd never been in love before. She'd never been really. She's quite antisocial, really. She didn't really enjoy others' company. She enjoyed doing her work indoors. She was quite shy, quite timid. And then into the second game, you know, she really comes out of her shell after Benezia's death. She kind of takes on that powerful mantle as the Shadow Broker. She becomes a real individual. And then in the third game, she comes round to the cause a bit more, in the sense that she's at the forefront of building the Crucible, researching everything, working with the humans. And yeah, and I don't know who else I would have chosen as a love interest. I think if everybody was available to everybody, regardless of preference, or male shepherd or femme shep, you know, I don't know who else I would have really liked. I think Miranda would have been quite a compelling option, if I'm being honest. I don't know how typical of a choice she is, but just I think her being able to find solace in someone finally, considering she's never been able to truly trust anybody in her whole life, would feel quite powerful. I'm not sure about Jack, because her dialogue is always a little bit too edgy. It would probably wind me up a little bit, but I think that there's a real vulnerability to her if you were able to get into a romance with her, which would be quite interesting. And I think Garrus would be a really good romance option as well. I think the two human characters that got added in the third game would have been great, Trainer and Cortez. I think Steve in particular would have been a really great option. He was just so off the cuff, so easy to talk to. I really liked him. In terms of ranking all three games, I'm not really sure I want to do that. I don't think you can, just because they're not really their own entities. They're intrinsically linked to each other, so I don't really feel like you could rank them because there are a lot of moving parts. You know, the first game has a lot more innocence and mystery to it, so you're a bit more wide-eyed. The second game has that whole kind of cyberpunk quality to it, where we're on the dirty side of the galaxy, and there's a lot more crime and neon everywhere, which made it cool. And then the third game has that kind of high stakes, and a lot of the storylines are coming to a close. So they're all very different. So I'm not going to rank the 3 games. Okay, so let's get rid of you. Okay, so second question from what? Matt? No? What are you doing? No. There we go. Okay, what was the toughest choices? What was the toughest choice, or what were the toughest choices you had to make throughout the series? That's that. I'm not really sure, but I've thought about this, and I can't really think. I feel like quite comfortable in most of the choices I've made. I guess that honestly, I think the toughest choice was probably this is going to come across really harsh. The toughest choice was probably the Cade and Ashley choice, because I didn't really care. Because they were both kind of meh. Like, I wasn't really asked. If I'm being honest, to be honest, guys. Caden was just kind of insipidly boring, and Ashley was just kind of a bit one-dimensional. So you could have kind of, it was fairly interchangeable, right? Caden was a romance option for female shepherds, so maybe that would have been a bit better, but to keep him, I'm not sure. But I found that a tough choice just because I didn't really see a good option. And but in terms of choices that had a bit more weight to them for me personally, I would have just said the ending. The ending was the toughest choice, and ultimately I think I picked the ending that I liked the least in terms of just the ending itself. I think I much preferred the Control ending, which was the ending I gave the least credence to in the moment. So yeah, that was probably the toughest choice, if I'm being honest. I think the rest of the choices I think was quite comfortable with. I think a tough choice probably in the first game was the whole Batarian terrorist thing, letting him go or letting the hostages die. That was quite a tough choice. But yeah, the ending was a difficult choice, if I'm being honest. All right. Most interesting species of aliens you encountered. My initial reaction would be to say the Solarians, but I think as part of the streamlining in the second and third games, I think that I mean, as you can see with Blasto 6, they kind of relegated the Elcor and the Hanar to kind of comic relief in a lot of ways. And I understand it would have been difficult to actually have an Elcor or Volus or Hanar squad mate, but they were actually really interesting. Like, an aquatic species was definitely something that was really interesting. A species that developed in a high gravity environment was also really interesting. Obviously the first game maybe had a slightly zanier quality to some of the designs, which is why they probably didn't want to include them so much, and they stuck to more human or, bipedal kind of human traditional designed creatures who were more like humans. That's probably one of the reasons why they brought like the Drell in, even though they're on the Hanar homeworld. They look a bit more human-like, so humanoid. So it was a bit easy. But I really liked the Solarians. I really wish we would have got to spend some serious time on Sakesh and learn more about Solarian politics, Solarian everything. Solarian would have been interesting. But yeah, I'd probably say the Solarians. I think that they were just really interesting. But I would have liked to spend some more time. Maybe get to visit the Hanar homeworld. Would have been interesting with the whole aquatic thing. Maybe they can design an aquatic species that's a little bit easier for them to incorporate in terms of cinematics and stuff in future games. maybe. I'm trying to think. I mean, obviously, I was probably the most interested in Asari, for obvious reasons. No, but yeah, I'd say the Solarians were probably the species I was most interested in. I just wish we would have got to spend a bit more time with them, and I wish we would have got a Solarian squad mate in the third game. For some reason, I was holding on to the idea that Karahe was going to be a squad mate. I really felt like he was going to join the squad, because it just made sense, right? He was already a soldier. So I really wish we would have got a Solarian squad mate in the third game, but I suppose we didn't really get a Krogan squad mate either outside of the DLC, so yeah, fair enough. Favourite Normandy? What colour was the first one? I can't even remember. Was it red? It might have been red. I like the SR2. I think the SR2, the blue, looked the nicest. My favourite colour is I prefer like a dark green is usually my favourite colour, but because I'm unfortunately an Everton fan in terms of football, like I like a bit of blue, royal blue, so I like the SR2. That's the right ship, isn't it? The SR2. But yeah. Okay. Question number 5. What do you think of Cerberus and the Elusive Man? Are they evil or somewhere in between? No, they're evil. I mean, I really didn't like that they had such a prominent role in the third game in the way that they did. There were just so many other ways that they could have gone in terms of Reaper-controlled existing factions, right? Like, I think there was so many other cooler ways they could have gone than reusing Cerberus, and like the fact that the Elusive Man only showed up in the ending with all his augments and in becoming a husk. I mean, I don't know. Okay, anyway, this is about whether they're evil or not. Somewhere in between. So I understand that his intentions, but the things that he did. I mean, on Sanctuary, he killed, children, refugees, all of them from all different races. I mean, they're definitely evil. But maybe this in the context of the second game is slightly different, but we know that they were hiding things from us. They were manipulated. They killed our Shepard's team, Amanita's team on a cruise from our background story, so I think that they're probably evil. I think that, yeah, they're evil. They're what I feel is that they could have tried to utilize all the other races in some capacity in terms of indoctrinated factions. They could have had, one of the mercenary factions from the second game could have got indoctrinated. The entire Batarian government had been indoctrinated, right? So the Batarians could have been an antagonist with or instead of Cerberus, right? Because we know that the Batarian homeworld's government had been infiltrated by indoctrinated politicians, so they could have, the whole Batarian army that was still left after we blew up the mass relay could have been an antagonist, right? That would have been really interesting. Yeah. I'm just going to call them evil because I think there are so many other things that they could have used for enemies instead of Cerberus in the third game, but their inclusion reeks of the game being a little rushed. So they already had them baked into the story, and they just Kai Leng was lame. They could have just made the Elusive Man the boss, right? With all his augments, they could have just tanked him up. He already could control people and stuff. They could have made him like his own little harbinger puppet master. Yeah, I think it's not that Cerberus didn't have just Cerberus's role in the third game was just blown way too out of proportion. They could have played a role, but a much smaller one, and then they could have added in lots of other small factions that were indoctrinated. There could have been an STG group who was indoctrinated, a group of Asari commandos who were indoctrinated, one of the clans on Tuchanka could have been indoctrinated, the whole Batarian army could have been indoctrinated, and that would have been, you could have fought all them, and it would have been great, Okay. Was the genophage deserved, or was it too much? So I guess you have to distinguish this into two different things, right? You've got the genophage and you've got the genophage variant. The genophage is a lot more justifiable than the genophage variant, I suppose. But I think in the context of the war, the Turians, the Solarians, everybody else was facing extinction at the hands of the Krogan, and they were showing no signs of stopping. They were dropping asteroids onto colonies and wiping places out, right? So it's difficult. The whole name, just because it sounds like genocide, kind of shows you what the writers were thinking of when they came up with it. But deserved is definitely the wrong word. Was it justifiable? Maybe. I think the original genophage, I think, is just a tool of war. You know, there's all, you know, like when people talk about honor in fighting and war and stuff, it's just kind of a bit silly, right? You know, like similar to how, like when in the Napoleonic Wars, Napoleon was so successful because he refused to engage in the rules of honor that countries did for wars, like wars that would determine, you know, who ruled what and borders and stuff. People would still line up and they'd have their little war, and Napoleon was like, no, no thanks. He'd use flanking maneuvers, he'd take the high ground. He refused to engage on the like etiquette of the wars, right? So the idea that, you know, all-out war, you need to be honorable and just kill people. Well, no, you're talking about like the survival of your people, of your race, of your country, whatever. So as long as if you're not doing it like preemptively when the war hasn't even started, that's a different issue, right? But if the war has already started and people are already dying, then you know, poisoning people, whatever, messing with water supplies, genetics, and all that kind of stuff, it all just falls into the basket of war. So I think it's justifiable in the circumstances it was released in. The genophage variant is quite a bit different. But I think Mordin explained himself. He came to regret the decision. But I think at the time, you can see the logic in why they did it. Just the Krogan are just so bloody adaptable and so dangerous. You can see why they did it. You know, fear can make people do strange things, right? But I think the genophage variant is the thing that has the most doubt over it, and they probably didn't need to do the genophage variant, but the original genophage was probably fair enough in the circumstances of war. Okay, were the Quarians in the wrong for trying to exterminate the Geth? Yes. Easy answer. Someone came at me pretty hard with who was very anti-Geth. I can't remember which video I was in. But yeah, because I think I said something like the Quarians haven't shown any outward aggression towards the Quarians, and the response was like, the Geth have shown nothing but aggression towards the Quarians. And I was just arguing that the Quarians have attempted genocide and the Geth haven't. Even though the Geth wiped out most of the population on Rannoch, they didn't pursue the Quarians into space when they could have and could have easily wiped them out. But the fact that they didn't shows that they weren't attempting genocide. They were just attempting to have a planet to live on, operating under the notion that organic species wanted them dead, which is a value that the Quarians instilled in them. And I was just trying to talk to that person in the sense that even though the Geth killed millions and millions of Quarians, it's not. They weren't attempting genocide because they weren't trying to wipe them out wholesale, which is what genocide means, right? Genocide means to attempt or to succeed in completely wiping out another group of people from existence. That is what the Quarians were trying to do. They were trying to wipe out the Geth after they reached consciousness. So I think the Quarians were 100% in the wrong. In their initial pursuit of it, I suppose after so many of them had died, you can understand why they were so intent on war with the Geth afterwards. But the initial breakout of the Geth's consciousness, it's just, I don't understand how a group of people who were that far progressed in scientific means just couldn't understand what they'd created, right? Yeah. I think the Quarriors were in the wrong. You're trying to exterminate a sentient race. That's how I see it. Favorite antagonists through the trilogy: Seren and Sovereign, Collectors and Harbinger, Reapers and the Elusive Man. This is a fairly easy one to answer. The first game had the best antagonists, I think. Seren and Sovereign made a really good combination. I think Sovereign, because he was singular and had mystery surrounding him and was menacing and operating in the shadows, and Seren's ties to us, his intimate ties to Anderson, being connected to the council still, covering his tracks, being a Spectre just like we are, or we were. Yeah, tied it in really well. And it had a political side to it. Yeah, the first game definitely had the best individual antagonists. The Collectors and Harbinger, I don't know. I don't think so. I think Harbinger's presence wasn't felt too much. I think you only felt Harbinger's presence really strongly in the Arrival DLC, and that's practically in content for the third game. The Collectors were just husks, essentially. So, I mean, in some ways you can see one of the antagonists of the second game, I suppose, is the Elusive Man, but I don't know. And we spent a lot of time fighting mercenaries in the second game who were a bit faceless. So definitely, yeah. And Reapers and the Elusive Man, I mean, we weren't really fighting any specific voice from the Reapers. So the Reapers were a bit of a faceless enemy, which we understood that's what they were. They were a tool. They weren't really anything with any particular meaning behind them. Whereas in the first game, Sovereign had a lot more mystery surrounding it, where, you know, we thought that Sovereign might be, you know, thinking and doings and all that kind of stuff, which it was thinking, but not in a free way. And the Elusive Man can do one. He just kept cropping up at all the most annoying moments. And I'm on board with Cerberus having a role in the third game, just not such a prominent one. And it coloured the Control ending in such an annoying way, where it was like, "Oh, I told you so," and you know, and Kai Lang and everything. Yeah, there were lots of other ways to go in the third game with enemies, and the Elusive Man I don't think should have been it. So Seren and Sovereign, without a doubt, best antagonists, because they were tied in to our story and the story of the Spectres and the Council really, really intimately and interwoven. And the political side of the galaxy was much more important in the first game. Do you know what I mean? Before the galactic threat was kind of realized. Okay, number 9. Would you play the trilogy again to try different choices? I would, but I said to one of you in the comments about because the free time that I have to play games, I record for the channel. Generally speaking, I have a few games that I will play to kind of unwind that are more gameplay focused and less story focused. You know, like I might play XCOM 2, I might play games like Speedrunners or even Fall Guys. Just, you know, some that are mindless or some that have a more strategic element. Like, I used to play Civ 5 a lot. I played a bit of Civ 6. I used to like football managing games. I used to like football games like 10 years ago before it got really bad. I used to like playing UFC 3, but UFC 4 is awful. So, you know, in terms of replaying games, I don't really have the time to prioritize that, because, like I said, it's a 200-hour experience. So if I didn't have the channel, then I probably would. Like, I played The Witcher 3 so many times. Like, what would happen after I played The Witcher 3 the first time? I'd get another game, and I'd be like, well, this isn't The Witcher 3. And then I'd just play The Witcher 3 again. So that I would probably play it through several times, with doing lots of different decisions, using male shepherd, picking different romance options. There are lots of different permutations that I'd like to try. But I think a lot of the choices, I don't know, because the Paragon, I'll talk about the Paragon Renegade system stuff when it comes up. But yeah, I would, but because I upload playthroughs to YouTube, you tend to focus on new experiences. So if I ever stop my channel, then replaying games would be something that I'd probably do a lot more often. Okay, were there any choices that you regret or wish that you'd done differently? Didn't you ask this question? The toughest choices. This is kind of the same question, right? The only one I outwardly regretted, I suppose, was sacrificing those people on Zaid's loyalty mission in the second game. Choices that I regret would probably be the ending choice, to be honest. I mean, a few of you were definitely in favour of the synthesis, and I definitely was at the time. But look, I think I would pick, knowing in hindsight, I would definitely pick control. That's probably the major decision I would change. Anything else? I don't know. I've seen kind of explanations for not curing the genophage and stuff, but that would involve stabbing Mudden in the back, right? Don't think so. No, I don't. Not that I can think of, but mainly the ending choice. I think I should have picked control, if I'm being honest. New subscriber, keep up the awesome work. Thank you very much, my friend. Thank you for your questions. I think you had some more questions. I'm sure you had some more questions. Oh, no, it was this person who had a few more. Alright, thank you, Spyros. I appreciate the questions. They were all very interesting. Right, Darius. Okay, how do you feel about an automated workforce like the Geth being made in real life? That's an interesting question. So I guess if you think about fiction that explores ideas like this, it's been explored quite a lot, right? If you watch, it's the whole The Matrix comes from an idea like this. If you watch the Animatrix, which is kind of like, they're like short stories, all animated films that feed into the story of the Matrix, you know that the machines in the Matrix come from an automated workforce. And when they developed consciousness, that's when the problems started to mount up. And I suppose in a lot of ways we do have a lot of automated elements in our workforce that ultimately cost people jobs, right? In factories, car manufacturing and stuff, it kind of dilutes the amount of human beings they're able to get work in those places, and we're becoming an increasingly service-focused society, at least in the UK, I suppose, and in Europe and stuff, as we kind of offload a lot of our manual labor to things like this. You know, not that it's an automated workforce, but it becomes much more streamlined and requires fewer and fewer people to run it and operate it. So I don't know. It would depend, right? I think in a lot of instances, I guess like in iRobot, I suppose in Blade Runner as well. Sorry, that's not a spoiler because it's in the opening credits that it's explained. Like, it's not an automated workforce, but the replicants are like human clones or like slightly altered human design that don't have the same mental capacity and stuff. Or that was the idea anyway. It's always a tricky thing, right? In iRobot, they're machines that have certain parameters and laws that their brains operate in and stuff. But the tricky thing with this is that the automated workforce is replacing jobs and making things easier for business, but the population of the world is also getting bigger, so it is very difficult. I suppose the question is, if you have an automated workforce, how do you make it look? Right? I think the issue... It is very difficult. How would I feel about it, though? Like the Geth. Well, I suppose that means like the Geth before they achieved their own consciousness. I suppose you'd have to do it with the notion that if you were making artificial beings who were just completely automated, who weren't self-aware, that you would have to do it with the idea that if they did achieve some sort of self-awareness, that you would have to emancipate. Right, so it would be dangerous in that sense because they'd be being used for business purposes or military purposes. And as soon as they'd be emancipated, they wouldn't have to fulfill that anymore because they'd be a free person, and then the businesses wouldn't want that because they'd see them as an asset. So it would all depend on the laws that would be made around the legal protections of something that would be deemed to be alive or conscious. So I'd be comfortable with it as long as there were laws in place that would protect the rights of potentially self-aware robots, right? Or synthetics, whatever you want to call them. So yeah, it's a very difficult topic. I think it would depend on the laws that would be available to protect potential conscious beings, I guess. But I'm all for it. I think we'll get taken over by machines eventually anyway. Immortality, right? Okay, where do you think... yeah, basically, I don't believe that sorry, I'm going to go back this question. Because it has branching paths. I love AI, you guys know that. I don't personally, my personal beliefs on human consciousness is that our human consciousness is not bespoke. It is bespoke, but it's not exclusive. I believe that there's a certain cocktail of psychological processes that have created the sensation of consciousness, but but I don't believe that consciousness is its own entity. I don't believe in the soul. I don't believe in consciousness as a separate thing. I believe that our brains are our brains, and this sensation that we feel is just a combination of our empathic capabilities, our long-term memory, and complex language. Those three are like the main three ingredients that all interact, that allow us to be self-aware. And I don't think that it's impossible to conceive a synthetic being having those same faculties and them combining in a similar way, as long as they're able. I believe that the key would be a synthetic being being able to perceive the outside world in a similar way to us. If a machine could only perceive the world through data or information, then I believe that would be a major hindrance to them developing consciousness in a similar way, or developing a consciousness that would be understanding of us as adjacent beings. But if they were able to see, to hear, even to smell, to touch, maybe taste I suppose wouldn't have much purpose for them, then I believe that they could develop in similar ways. If they were able to empathize and take the perspectives of other objects, other people, if they were able to have complex languages, if they were able to have long-term memories, then I don't feel like it would be any different. You know, people want to talk about emotions and stuff. I don't really feel like it would be too much different, because emotions are just a way of navigating the world, right? So if you step next to a cliff and you feel a sudden bit of fear of the height, because it's a deadly height, and you pull back, that sensation of fear might not be too much different to a synthetic going through the processes of I should stay away because I'll die. That cognition would be fear. The acknowledgement of danger is fear. And I don't feel like that's too much of a stretch to conceive it that way. So, yeah. God, that's such a tangent. Anyway, second question, Darius. Great question. Great question, my friend. Right, where do you think the story of the Milky Way galaxy goes after 3? I really don't know. I guess a lot of that depends on what they put forth as the canon ending. I think... I just don't see how that they could incorporate the synthesis ending into a sequel. I think that would be so difficult. But they could definitely incorporate the control or destroy endings. The control ending, like, Shepard could quite easily have could have told the whole Reaper fleet to just hibernate, to shut down, go to various planets scattered across the galaxy and just sit there dormant. Maybe they can't be reactivated as a safety measure. And maybe that's where that trailer was, what that was hinting at. Or maybe everything's been destroyed, and that was just the remnants of the Reapers. I feel like, yeah, it could be that, but I don't know. In terms of what big storylines they could do, they covered so many of them. You know, like the emergence of an AI in the Geth, issues of dominant species, like with the Krogan and the Genophage, the politics on board the Citadel between the three main races, issues of slavery and dominance within Batarian society, deities and religion in Hanar society, more peaceful existence in terms of like the Elcor, the way that they lived. Yeah, they covered so many topics, you know, some better than others, some a bit clumsier, some more nuanced. But I don't know what kind of big enemy they could put forth here. I guess the only thing that they could do would to be like an intergalactic enemy, because we're only in the Milky Way, you know, like the Andromeda kind of thing, where maybe we encounter a threat from another galaxy. But what could they do that would have such long-term implications like the Reapers? I'm really not sure. The problem is that because the story they've told spans the whole galaxy, it's really difficult to get a rein on this kind of like story, I guess. I mean, my point is that you need to control so many facets of a story to make it feel satisfying and tight and have mystery to it, whereas when you've expanded so much, sometimes they might need to shrink it back down to, in some way, to narrow it. So maybe that's done through the destruction of the mass relays, the separation of the various star clusters, the re-establishing of an organic made mass relay system. Maybe something like that. So maybe they have to pull the galaxy back a bit. Maybe they have to, you know, just rein in the technology a bit. You know, maybe after everything had been, all the synthetic stuff had been destroyed, maybe if they went with the destroy ending, everything would have to go a bit more industrial. Maybe they'd have to roll back the tech cycle a little bit. So maybe the Milky Way would have to re-establish itself, connections would have to be made, maybe some new races would emerge, right? Like that, like the Yarg. Yeah, maybe it would be about re-establishing connections. Maybe it's just difficult because you feel like the Reapers are such a danger, such an all-conquering danger, that they would need to rekindle that. That would be really disappointing if they just reused the Reapers. Someone wanted to use them in the way that the Elusive Man did and they found a way to control them. That would be really disappointing. I hope they don't do something like that. Maybe they just rehash the whole synthetic conflict. I don't know. I'd be interested to hear your ideas on this, guys, because I'm struggling to think of nuanced things that they could come up with, because they covered so many bases. Like I said, some better than others, but they covered a lot. Some in just the side stories, you know, things to do with genetics, war, you know, all that kind of stuff that I already mentioned. It's really difficult to think of what kind of major overarching story they could come up with. The only thing I could think of that would be bigger than the Reapers would be something like Transcendence or Ascension or deities or some kind of ethereal style storyline or race or overseers or something like that. Some people who were still in the background, like I said, like maybe another plane of existence. I feel like the only other things that they could mess with that they didn't touch science fiction wise would be stuff like time travel, alternate realities. But I guess that stuff is more sci-fi fantasy. It's the zanier aspects of sci-fi, right? Because whereas I think the stuff like Mass Effect, it's a little more grounded, right? There are things that obviously or can only exist in science fiction, but they feel a bit like they could exist, right? Whereas things like time travel, alternate realities, ascension, different planes of existence, are a little woollier, I guess. They're a bit more woolly. I keep saying woolly. Yeah, but they're a bit more intangible. That's a better word. So maybe they have to visit something like that to progress. But my main worry, kind of similar to my worry about like The Witcher 3 and stuff, is as a game studio, all the writers and probably some of the magic from this trilogy has gone with the people who created it, right? Most of the staff, I think they founded their own studio, right? So I think a lot of the magic is probably gone. So my main fear would be that they just can't get to these kind of heights again. Just like I'm worried that a lot of the staff at CD Projekt Red left after the Cyberpunk backlash. A lot of them were people who were integral to The Witcher 3's development, so they're probably not going to be able to recreate that kind of magic again without the same people, right? So I'd be worried as to what, like I said, the EA would want them to do would want them to write a story that is familiar to the fans, to play into that, because they want a surefire hit. So what's a surefire way to do that? We'll just revisit the same stuff. So reuse the Reapers, reuse Shepherd. It's a tough thing, but yeah, I think the only way to, because this is such like a grand story with a grand enemy, with a grand threat, it's tough to pull it down to a smaller, more grounded story. So I think the only way that they could go would be time travel or alternate realities or ascension, themes of that nature. Thanks, Darius. Those were great questions. Now, I know that you guys had like a whole massive thread here, but I'm just going to stick to what the question here. All right, Sir Elric. Is that a Knight's Tale reference? I've always meant to ask you that, Sir Elric. Okay. Major spoilers, right. What are your thoughts on the level of Paragon pandering that is present throughout the trilogy? I'll do a bit of a comparison. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, Paragon pandering. I won't go through all the. I have read all the examples already. But, so yeah, this is I guess one of the main weaknesses of the whole series. It's a good thing and a bad thing, but the Paragon and Renegade system is, at times it feels like they feel like shackles on the dialogue system, having that point scoring in the background. But I guess the problem is that, like you're saying here, Sir Elric, is they do lean into the Paragon side a bit heavier in terms of the way that events turn out, and they kind of want you to pick Paragon a lot more than they do Renegade. I guess the problem is that because of the military focus and there being such a declarative enemy, what you really want in a system where you only often have two choices is, for there to be shades of grey in both decisions. Whereas often I think, like you said, like a lot of the Renegade choices end up in, some of the characters who you really like not having a good replacement. Like, so if Rex dies, Mordin dies, like whoever's there in their place just is nothing in comparison. So why would you ever go Renegade in that sense? Whereas I feel like it would be better off to have, I know it would be a lot more work for the developers, but you need to have alternate paths that are both really meaningful in certain ways. Like the example I always think of is The Witcher 2. Like, I absolutely adore The Witcher 2. Like, I didn't play games from this generation, from the Mass Effect, from the PS3 generation at all while I was at university. I didn't have any money to play games, to spend on games. I still played games, but no new ones. So when in about 2012, ironically, when this came out, and I built a new PC, the first two games that I played were The Witcher 2 and Dark Souls. And The Witcher 2 in particular, what I love is, spoiler alert here, kind of. So it's split into like a prologue, Act 1, 2, 3, and an epilogue. But in Act 2, a decision that you make in the end of Act 1 determines where you go. So if you choose one way, you end up at the Dwarven settlement, and if you make another choice, you spend all Act 2 there. And if you choose the other path, you end up at the army settlement, the human army settlement, for the whole of Act 2. So all the quests and everything from the other place are unattainable if you go here, and vice versa. And I feel like that's what the Paragon and Renegade system needed more of. They needed missions exclusive to each one. They needed maybe characters exclusive, good characters exclusive to each one. I realised that Reeve and other characters would have been present, and you could probably consider them Renegade alternatives. But you need meaningful characters and meaningful paths, divergent paths, open to each. And in my opinion, when you have such a declarative binary dialogue system like this, I realised I think the first game had a lot of neutral options. The second and third game didn't really have any, did they? I'd forgotten about that, but yeah, you need them to lead down very different paths, which obviously means a lot more work for the developers. Alternate missions, completely alternate outcomes. I think that's what they needed more. So I definitely feel like there is Paragon pandering, but ultimately I think it's just they didn't. Yeah, I don't think they gave enough reason to pick Renegade a lot of the time. And then the consequences often of the Paragon stuff is just, there's just more to it. Like, you know, saving the Ratnai Queen, making sure Rex is alive. Yeah, I just think they would need a lot more development time, and they'd need to create a lot more divergent paths to make it more meaningful and create more shades of grey with it. And yeah, you used a lot of good examples here where you're very rarely punished for picking Paragon, whereas you get noticeably punished for the Renegade stuff. Yeah, like killing the Ratnai Queen. Yeah, there's very little upside to killing her. So that there needed to be a better alternative to just killing her. Maybe imprisoning her would have been a better alternative, right? So maybe freeing or imprisoning would have been a better option, whereas outright killing her just cuts you out of the future content. So that's where you needed a better alternative. Yeah, and the same here that you were explaining with Malin's data. Yeah. I guess you said the same with the Destroy ending, yeah. Yeah, so yeah, there is obviously a definite lean towards Paragon. That's really what the decision they want you to make, but that's their fault for choosing a binary system, I feel. I feel like they should have either hidden the system and just placed the options wherever they wanted on the dialogue wheel, or they needed to commit to alternate missions, full alternate paths, instead of just doing all the same missions, but people look at you differently and some characters are alive, some characters are dead. I think they needed to commit to stuff like that. Okay, and you had another question here. I already answered this. Yeah, do you think you'll ever replay the trilogy? Like I said, with playing games on the channel, that's where my gaming time generally goes, or story game time goes. If I wasn't on the channel, I was just playing this myself, I probably would replay it. Maybe as a male shepherd for some of the romance options. Yeah, I'd be interested in seeing most of them. I think male shepherd had a few more long-term options. Jack, Tali, Miranda, and Liara would have been an option for male shepherd as well, right? Yeah, it would have been interesting, but I don't really like the voice actor. He seemed quite stiff to me. So maybe I would have found that a bit annoying in terms of replaying. But maybe that would have made it easier to be Renegade, I'm not sure. Yeah, offline for personal fun, yeah. I don't necessarily have the time for that anymore, though, which is a shame, but that's the way it is. I can only really do that if I take heavy breaks. Like, I do sometimes take, like, 1 or 2 week breaks in between playthroughs if I'm feeling a bit... if I just want to take time off. Time off like it's my job, you know what I mean. Mass Effect 3 in particular had an amazing modding scene. and a lot of them are being ported over to the Legendary Edition. I'd like to post them. Yeah, go for it. What I really wish I'd done is I just wish I would have played with mods from the beginning. Like I said, I don't often replay a lot of the games I play on the channel, just because I'm immediately playing something else usually. What I will be doing when I play Cyberpunk 2077, I have been keeping a close eye on the mods for Cyberpunk. I will be playing that blind with mods. So it's I might be doing the same for Control. There's not that many mods for Control, but same thing. The tribute song. I might play that at the end. Interesting. By Maluk. I'll try and remember that. Sorry if I don't remember. Okay, thanks for your questions, Sir Elric. I think you might have some more. Okay, I agree with everything mentioned before. So for funsies, let's try these hypotheticals. Okay, thank you, Rabadog. Okay. Question 1. F, marry or kill Asari Secondary Character Edition. Shiala, Thorian. Yeah, Shiala, I remember her. She was very pretty. Shiara the consort, she was weird, and Arya. Okay. F, I'm going to choose Shiala. She's very pretty, but she also can't really leave. I've forgotten the name of the planet she was on. She said because they're all kind of like Thorian indoctrinated, right? So, yeah, she can never pursue us. So, she'd have to stay on that world. On, I nearly came to it. Oh, it's got a Chinese sounding name to the place. I've forgotten anyway. Yeah, F, Charlotte. I'm gonna marry Arya. I'm gonna be honest. I mean, she's powerful. She's got connections. She's experienced. She's hot. I mean, yeah, we'd rule the galaxy with an iron fist by her side. So I would marry Arya, and it's Carrie-Anne Moss's voice, so that's beautiful. So yeah, I'd marry Arya and I'd kill Shaira because she was weird. That's not a grounds for murder, but that's what it sounds like. Okay, question 2. Samara versus Jack, biotic fight or otherwise, experience versus brute force. Who do you think would reign supreme? Is there a potentially stronger matchup than these two? Okay, I think Samara wins. I know Jack's like the most powerful human biotic, but Samara's got like 1,000 years of experience. She's a powerful biotic in her own right. It's like the battle of cleavage, isn't it? I'd pick Samara. Too calculated. Jack's too emotional. You'd make a mistake eventually. Samara would just have to be defensive in the beginning when Jack was throwing out all the brute force and then pick her off after that. Is there a potentially stronger matchup than these two in terms of biotics and stuff? Probably not. Liara's a strong biotic, but she's probably too calm. Right? Too kind, probably, even is the better word. No, I don't think there's a stronger matchup, maybe. I don't know. Jack is pretty damn powerful, so maybe I'm just giving too much credit to Samara because she's hot. But, yeah, probably Samara. I don't think there's a stronger matchup. Okay, other than Mordin and Shepard, do you think Rex would name his kids after any other crewmate? He's bound to have a whole brood of kids. Garrus, I think he might name one after Garrus. I think he got along with Garrus and they've been buddies since the first game. So probably Garrus. I don't know. I don't think anyone else. He was chatting to Liara quite a bit. I don't remember too much interaction between him and Tali. Maybe Joker. I'm not sure. But yeah, probably Garrus. I can't really think of any others. Okay, any secondary characters you think would make an awesome spin-off story? Game or otherwise, like novels? Shiala and Gianna Parasini, yeah, I remember, stuck out as characters to me that could have easily been written without too much thought. But they felt like fully fleshed out characters that had more to give. Yeah, like secondary, it's tough to think secondary because there's kind of in-between characters. I don't know about spin-off games. I mean, obviously Anderson has his own part to play in the books, so he wouldn't count, but he could make an awesome spin-off game. That's one thing that I think that they definitely could do would be to do several stories within the Mass Effect universe of a smaller scale, you know. We could go to Sakesh, we could go to Palaven, we could go to Thessia and have that be the whole game there, right? There's such big places they could try, but I guess that's not what a Mass Effect game is about. I'm not sure. I don't know what you mean by what would be secondary, because would Liara or Garrus, they wouldn't really class as secondary characters, would they? Yeah, Shiala and Gianna, you both said that they're characters who would be better, more fleshed out in the comments previously. I need to have a think about this. Who else would there be? Maybe Seren. Maybe Seren before he was indoctrinated. The story of how he. I don't know if that's in the novels because I've not read them yet. I'm still reading Dune. Maybe Seren. Yeah, I know he's not really a secondary character. He's a primary antagonist, but maybe Seren and how he got led to being indoctrinated, where he found Sovereign and all that stuff would be interesting, I think. Okay. Besides Shepard, whose point of view would you like to play through if it were possible? Yeah, so this means more primary characters. I think it would be. You could definitely do a point of view of what Samara's life was like before her children, because you could go back. That's a serious time jump going backwards, right? Before humans were spacefaring and all that stuff. You could maybe do a story of the Rachni Wars, maybe. So that would maybe involve a Krogan point of view, or an Asari or Solarian point of view. So I don't know which character specifically. I feel like Garrus would be cool because he's kind of like the Turian Shepherd. But I don't know, because he was in CSEC. I don't know how interesting that would be. Maybe Rex and the whole fallout with his father on Tuchanka, maybe, because he led a life as a mercenary. It would potentially be really interesting, kind of in the style of Mass Effect 2, in terms of it being filled with crime and stuff. Arya would be great, actually. Yeah, Arya would probably be great. Liara we kind of discovered as her life got interesting, but I suppose you could, in that 2 years while Shepard was being rebuilt, you could see how Liara ended up as the Shadow Broker in a bit more detail. That would probably be interesting. Yeah. Good questions, my friends. Right, some random ones again from the same person. What would you rather see, a Blasto movie or the Hamlet play by the Elcor? As much as I love the Elcor, it would probably get frustrating hearing Hamlet done that way. Whereas, because I've read Hamlet, so Blasto would probably be my major preference there. Which reporter do you think has been the most successful at reaching their audience, regardless of apparent bias or actual content? Emily Wong, El Jelani, or Diana Alice? I mean Emily, because I can't be objective about this, because she's annoying and we punched her in the face a few times and she punched us. And Diana Alice was just an awful character, so Emily Wong, I wish she would have shown up. I know that Diana Alice has just essentially replaced Emily Wong, right? But yeah, these two characters can do one. Emily Wong all day. But I know the question was who's been most successful, so probably Diana. But I didn't really get to. Al Jelani could have come aboard the ship, so I guess I didn't really see that. Vorcha or Volus squad mate, go. I mean, as a squad mate, the Volus would probably be pretty useless in combat. So the Vorcha would probably be better in that sense. I mean, I really liked hearing those stories that we read about the Vorcha being trained from birth to be different, and they actually became less kind of aggressive and feral like they were when they were raised on their homeworld. So that would be interesting. Maybe because they have such short lifespans, maybe we could like raise a Vorcha and educate them ourselves to be one of our crew. That would be really interesting. I would probably pick Volus, but the Volus are kind of like dwarfs, right? They're all bankers. They're all really interested in money and business and stuff. That was kind of the obvious analog, right? The Volus were just dwarfs essentially. So probably Volus, but if we got to Razor Vulture and they changed their voices a bit and gave them lips or something, so that they wouldn't attack with the teeth. Yeah, I'd be interested in both, but if it would be like Vulture that the Asari helped raise, that would be interesting. But if we couldn't do that, it had to be an adult, then probably Volus would be interesting. But they both sound kind of really breathy, don't they? The Volus with the breathing apparatus. It's a tough question. I would like both. Okay. If everyone could eat the same foods, who in Shepard's crew would eat pineapple pizza? Oh, God. I mean, I don't like pineapple pizza, so my inherent instinct is to pick like a character I don't like as the person who would eat pineapple pizza, so that'd probably be Jacob. I don't know. I don't know, man. I don't know how to answer this. I don't like pineapple pizza, but I'm not going to judge people. I don't know. I don't know. Jacob. Thanks for your questions, dude. Oh. Also, I don't know if you've seen it yet, but perhaps watch the trailer for the new Mass Effect coming out. Bioware has changed so much as a company from when this franchise first came out. I'm apprehensive what this next entry might introduce, but anyway, the trailer was like, yeah, so I've watched that. Yeah, I'm apprehensive about it as well. I feel like the studio's probably changed a lot, so whatever comes next, I think you maybe need to play with a pinch of salt and not get too excited about, because the writers are completely different and EA might have more influence than they ever did. Bioware I haven't exactly had any home runs since Dragon Age Inquisition, right? And I've not even played that, I just know that it was generally well accepted. And I played about 5-10 hours of it, but I didn't really get past the intro boss. Okay, Wesley, I would like to hear your overall thoughts on Shepard the character and how she is written. Okay, so this is a tricky one, right? Because in RPGs, the games often run a fine line between whether the character is their own character, kind of like Geralt is in The Witcher 3, or I don't know, Aloy is in Horizon or whatever, or whether they want them, when you have a created character, whether they want them to just simply be a conduit for your experience, so the main character has very little, doesn't feel like an actual character because they're just an avatar for your experience. So I think that overall Mass Effect has kind of stepped across that line to eat both sides a bit from time to time. Obviously I played as female Shepard, so the voice actor obviously is slightly different in the performance. I think some of you said that Mark Mear's performance seems a little bit more military, whereas I've forgotten her name. Ashley something, I can't remember. The voice actress for FemShep had a little bit more nuance to her. But obviously we have our background stories. They came into a few different bits, or at least mine did. I obviously don't know the others. Okay, how they're written. So again, it's part of it is shaped by how you play the game, right? But I suppose a game like this definitely places Shepard at like the front and center in terms of like the kind of savior of the galaxy, if you will. Very kind of hero worshipped, individualist idea of a character. And although we always give credit to our team, it is very kind of centered on Shepard and how the individual can rise and lead everyone else. And I guess there are some religious undertones to that whole kind of story, right? A chosen one essentially rising up, and there was quite a bit of religious imagery in that whole final scene, with us kind of walking into the light, us kind of going up on that platform, right? Speaking to an ethereal character who was kind of all-knowing. There was some definite religious undertones to that. But yeah, I think this is actually quite a difficult question because, again, the Shepard as a character is just kind of supposed to be you, so it's tough how to characterize Shepard as a character who I'm not playing as, right? I think a lot of the AAA games from the last generation, from like the PS4, Xbox One generation, moved away from character created protagonists quite a bit. A lot of the most successful games had, you know, crafted protagonists. So yeah, I'm really struggling with this one, you know. I think I've said in parts of the playthrough already, but I think at times it does feel like we're spoken about very little in terms of our personal struggle, right? I think we're often like a conduit for all the other characters' struggles, and I feel like our background isn't explored enough in terms of, you know, whether we were an orphan or we had parents, depending on your background choice and things like that. It would have been nice for each game to have some sort of background stuff that you could add in at the beginning so that it could be interspersed in the conversations. I'm honestly, Wesley, I'm sorry, but I'm really struggling to answer this. I guess that means I'm more on the side of Shepard felt more like an avatar for my experience than Shepard felt as a character in themselves, I guess is my answer. And I think the rest of how they're written is kind of tied into the Paragon and Renegade system and the restrictions of that, which kind of hold you back a little bit in terms of creating a Shepard who you really feel like is doing the things you would do. I feel like there needed to at least be a third option, which is apparent that they did in the ending. The ending had 3 options. So I feel like they should have incorporated a third skew in terms of the dialogues just to create a bit more nuance. And I feel like maybe we should have been able to express there should have been more struggle for Shepard internally. Perhaps we got a bit of that in the 3rd game, but you know the galaxy was depending on us, so it's a bit more understandable. Yeah, I'm sorry if that answer was awful. I've just struggled a bit to express that. Yeah, the teaser trailer. Yeah, I watched that. We've talked about that. Okay, I liked this question. Okay, Rene. Often, AI is thought of through the lens of monster cinema, just another would-be apocalypse. But do you ever feel that a true sentient machine would just be a continuation of our civilization, not its end? Say, if the Geth had wiped out the Quarians in the Morning War, would the Quarian culture and civilization be wiped out, or just take a new turn, assuming we would not just coexist? That's a great question, right? Because the Geth, in terms of their image, look very similar to the Quarians in their suits. So that idea that their culture is just being continued, that they have in essence just transformed, not been eradicated if the Quarians had been wiped out. But yeah, so the crux of this question is, do you ever feel that a true sentient machine would be a continuation of our simulation, not its end? So I do generally agree with that. Like you said, things like, you know, Terminator, things like The Matrix, yeah, it's kind of monster cinema where it's kind of seen as a fight between who's more dominant, and the machines often win. But you have to, if a true AI, a true sentient machine would exist, it wouldn't just be cold and calculating. If like I'd already discussed before, if it would be a machine who felt things, who could perceive the world, who had its own personality, then it wouldn't really be that much different to ourselves, and it would be vastly more complex. So if it was educated and aware of our culture and civilization and our humor and things like that, then it would, in a lot of ways, just be a continuation. And, you know, something's going to happen to the human race at some point, whether it's through overpopulation, whether it's through all the various different dystopic changes that might happen, whether that's through something that happens to the planet, the food supply, disease, viruses, overpopulation, like what was explored with the Drell homeworld. They exhausted all their natural resources before they were properly capable of spacefaring and things of that nature. Then machines as a continuation of our civilization sound a lot more realistic if it's not viable for humans to live here anymore. And it would be a way for us to achieve immortality, right? And it would be a continuation of our civilization. So yeah, I would generally echo that sentiment. It just depends on the nature of the machine, right? If the machine is created with directives at its core, similar to what the Leviathan artificial intelligence that was created with a directive, right, to preserve organic life at any cost, then you encounter a problem. If it's a free AI, then it's just like you and me. It can do what it wants. And I would believe that as long as it's able to perceive and empathize and things, then it wouldn't just be turned into like a monster cinema killing machine. It would just be just like us. So yeah, a great question, Renee. Coexistence would be a consideration, but a continuation of our civilization, I often think you can see through the lens of, you know, as an organic species, we might not make it. So it would be a way of continuing our culture, our civilization, our essence, our history, to preserve it and to live on. So you could see it that way as well. Great question, Renee. Okay, Dan. Favorite species in the game? Yeah, probably Solarians, even though they were kind of slightly evil in the third game, I suppose, the Dalatras. But yeah, I liked a lot of the species. I think the Krogan are good, but they raise a lot of problems due to the details that were provided about, you know, everything to do with how they breed, how survivable they are, the rate at which they breed. It just created a snowball of problems that they became something very difficult to discuss because there was just no easy answer with the Krogan. So I think the Krogan need to be altered slightly. Otherwise, there's just too many problems with it. But I really like the Solarians, yeah. Yeah, I like the Solarians. Favourite character, Mordin, 100%. It's close between him and Legion, but we spent more time with Mordin. And yeah, he had so much soul, so much personality. He was great. And yeah, and obviously I loved Liara's character arc overall, but you know, Mordin's Mordin. But yeah, I really liked Liara's arc the most, and as like a character themselves, I liked Mordin the best. Okay, I often find with great world-building stories, Tolkien, Harry Potter, Mass Effect, etc., that I imagine what I'd be in the story's universe, the role I'd play, how I got there, how I'd interact with the universe's characters. What sort of role do you think that you'd personally have or would like to have in the Mass Effect universe? That is a great question. I have absolutely no idea. I have no idea, man. It's so difficult to imagine. I'd be like that pro AI campaigner guy. I'd be like the one who like tried to make friends with the Geth when they were killing everyone and just get killed or something. No, that's really difficult to say, you know. I'm really not sure. It'd probably end up being something similar to what Jack was doing in the third game, probably. Yeah, probably something like that. I definitely wouldn't be in the military. I definitely wouldn't be like the kind of frontline kind of guy, and I probably wouldn't be an explorer either. Oh yeah, probably something to like Jack, working in that in the academy or something like that. Yeah, probably. Okay, download, save, delete, F, marry, kill, Legion, Glyph, or Chatika. F, Glyph. I mean, you can't resist that bow tie, right? Marry Legion, obviously. Sorry, Chatika, I don't really know you well enough, so I'm going to have to get rid of you. Yeah, I'd marry Legion. Legion's Bay. One of my favourite playthroughs I've watched of not only this game, but any game. Really enjoyed your blind experience of these incredible games. Thanks, Dan. Really appreciate it, mate. It's been great. I have to thank all of you for coming along with me. Okay, with science. So, what would you say is the weakest part of the trilogy? Either in the storyline or in the recurring themes? I mean, I wouldn't say it's the weakest. It's not the weakest part objectively, but I think the thing that might stop me from replaying the games if I was in a position to do so, maybe be I'm not really inclined to play third-person shooters that much. So while I really enjoyed the combat, I don't find it that relaxing. Yeah. So for me personally, the third-person shooters, if it didn't have a great story, I mean, it's not something that I would choose to play in that sense. But objectively, I think the weakest part of the trilogy is probably the Paragon Renegade system is definitely... Oh, you said storyline or recurring themes. I think one of the weakest parts is kind of the constant contradiction in the attitude towards synthetics. Like, we have the attitude to synthetics from the Reapers, and from what we know from the VI, the AI, the Leviathan AI, and what everyone says, and synthetics, they'll never be like us. They'll never be really self-aware and all that stuff. And then what we actually experienced with Legion and with the Geth and with ED, showing us the other way, right? This is a tough question. Recurring themes? Huh. Recurring themes, like... That's a tough question, man. But yeah, I think... just in general, I think the Paragon and Renegade system, I think, does hold the game back a little bit in some ways. I know that they committed to it in the first game, so they kind of felt maybe a bit hamstrung. But I feel like they needed to either have more options, like 3 or 4 options to add to a point scoring system like that, and not just 2. I think that the fact that it's only 2, they tried to have neutral options in the first game, but because they don't give you points, like no one wants to pick them. I still picked them when I felt like it was appropriate, but yeah, Paragon and Renegade is probably the something that is in all 3 games, right? This is specific. I think. Did you ask another question? I can't remember. Yeah, I'd say one thing that I wish was different. I wish that there was a role for all the squad mates to play in major missions. Similar to how, like the final mission in the second game. Like I would like a more tactical element to some of the stuff. Like maybe you take 2 people with you directly, but then there are roles that everyone else has to do, and you can just maybe assign them to that element of the mission. And then when there's a big story moment where everything's discussed and spoken about, everyone's there. I know that would have been more difficult in like the second game when there's like 50 squad mates, but I would have liked sort of like on Vermeer, where everybody is there when Rex, you have that showdown with Rex, and everyone's there and everyone comments on it while you're there. That's what I would really want to be different, is all the squad mates being present on these big missions, where if you had a squad of of 8 badass soldiers with different abilities, you'd take all of them with you. Why would you just take 3 of them? So I understand that they need to design the gameplay around a certain amount, so fine, have the actual combat sections only be 3 people, but then when there's dialogue and story input, have everyone there as if they were fighting, sort of like how it would be in a Final Fantasy game where everybody shows up for the story interactions. That's one thing that I hated. Was like, some of you were telling me, oh, because you're an engineer, you need to take certain squad mates who are stronger that complement your playstyle. And it was like, well, I don't really care about that. I just want the people who are going to input to the story like the way that I want and I find the most interesting. Do you know what I mean? So that would eliminate that, and I could just pick people who are better tactically, and then I'd know that Liara or Edie or whoever would be on the would be in the dialogue bits. Yeah. So that's definitely, I know that's got nothing to do with the storyline or the recurring themes. But yeah, I'd say, yeah, the kind of constant contradiction in terms of the attitude towards synthetics throughout the story always kind of flustered me a bit, because you want to try and operate within the parameters of what the world is telling you. But if it's constantly fluctuating between how it's perceiving the Geth and the synthetics in general, it becomes that kind of influenced me in my decision to pick synthesize at the end, because I was like, well, I guess the parameters of this world are that synthetics are evil, and that even if the Geth are friendly now, they'll turn evil, because that's what the VI says. But I guess maybe I read too much into that. Okay, I might come back to this if I ever think, but yeah. Okay, biggest regrets. Yeah, probably the ending choice. I definitely, in hindsight, preferred the control ending. This is difficult, but just because all the decisions, like, this is definite. This definitely ties into the Paragon pandering, because I don't really feel much regret for most of the decisions. The one thing that I weirdly kind of wish that I maybe would have lost a few characters in the second game in that ending mission. I got really lucky with who I picked. Like, my immediate instinct to pick Mordin for everything would have gotten so many people killed, Tali included, right? I almost kind of wish I would have made a mistake there. I guess I just got lucky. Like, I think a lot of the stuff. I mean, one of you guys, I think might have been you, Swax, who said, because a lot of the comments help you through a lot of the game, making sure you don't miss missions and stuff and do things in the right order, you end up with kind of a slightly too perfect playthrough, and that definitely is interesting. I do prefer it to be a bit more flawed, but maybe they should have written more of those kind of flaws in there, where you would definitely lose one or the other person, right? Maybe they should have made it that you would, in the final mission, you had to pick one of 2 people for this certain job. If you pick this person or that person, then the other person will probably die in the other role or that role or something, rather than it just being you can save everyone or lose everyone. I'd rather, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, a biggest regret probably was just that ending decision. Maybe I just didn't think it through long enough. I was playing too late, maybe something like that. I don't know. I've nothing against the synthesis ending. I think I prefer the control ending. But yeah, that's probably my biggest regret. Maybe it's just because it's fresh in my memory. Yeah. What style of gameplay from 1 to 3 was your favourite, and why? Third game. It's just the most polished, right? The first game was a bit too repetitive. The enemies didn't do enough damage. There wasn't enough tactical stuff in there. The inventory system was an absolute nightmare. But yeah, third game, we had more tools. It was a bit too streamlined in the second game, where we only had like 4 abilities. Yeah, I think 3 struck the best balance. We still had lots of weapon customization. We had loads more abilities. You had to move around a lot more. It was a lot more fluid as we moved forward in the generation. Yeah, third game had the best combat. Definitely. Okay. Done it again. Okay. What were your favourite missions across the games? Top 10 list? I'll give you like a top 3. I can't think top 10. Okay. This isn't like the ones I like the best. I'm just thinking of ones that were definitely memorable. I'm really... Yeah, I'd say from... I'll just give you like probably my favourite one from each game. That'll probably be better. I really liked the mission on Ilos in the first game, purely for the conversation with Vigil. Because that felt like such a big moment, didn't it? That felt like such a big moment. Talking to him. I mean, Vermeer was cool because we got to talk to Sovereign, but Sovereign was kind of clouded in mystery, so getting to talk to Vigil like answered so many questions. Like I'd just been like dying to know, dying to understand for so long, and just to have this kind of like little information kiosk just appear was just great. And yeah, the Prothean archives where all the stasis chambers had failed and everything was quite morose, and yeah, that was a really cool mission. I really enjoyed that, and talking to Vigil was just great, just really great. From the second game, I mean, it's got to be the Mordin's mission on Tuchanka. I felt like a real build in that mission. You know, we'd spoken to Mordin on the Normandy about what he'd done with the genophage variant, and you know, we were seeing the experiments that Malin was doing, and Mordin was revealing more and more about the conflict in the logic for executing the genophage variant, and I felt like a real build of tension as I was progressing through that mission, like real anxiety building up as we reached the end, and yeah, that was a great mission just because it was so the tension was so palpable. And I know that was a side mission, that wasn't even one of the main missions, but the collectors were just kind of a bit meh. I think they were cool, but they didn't have as much flavor to them. So yeah, definitely enjoyed the Malin's Data mission in the second game. And in the third game, I mean, there were a lot of big moments. The moments that obviously, because I have tragedy bias, I guess, but you know, the Tuchanka and the genophage cure and the Thresher Moor taking the Reaper down, and Mordin dying. That was a great mission because it had such an emotional thing at the end. It had a big, huge, probably one of the biggest set pieces in the game, right? Was a great mission in 3. And Rannoch was good as well because it had a lot of tension. But I'd definitely say Tuchanka. So yeah, that's not really a top 10, but yeah, I'd say Ilos in the first game, Malin's Data in the second game, and Tuchanka in the third game, definitely. What are the biggest gameplay weaknesses across the games? I'm not like an expert on third-person shooters. I definitely have a preference for melee style games. But it's difficult for me to judge this because this game's now 2 generations old, right? So I have to judge it. I can't judge it through the lens of modern games necessarily. And then the third game is still a lot of fun, to be honest. I guess I'd just probably say the movement, I guess, is a bit stiff, probably. And there's a bit of camera shake that does my head in a bit. I think I would have probably been better with the movement if I would have played on controller. I wish I would have played on controller, even though it would have meant I would have been less accurate. I think I would have been better with the positioning and sticky cover and stuff playing on a controller, but I don't really know unless I try it. If I play Andromeda, I'm probably going to play on a controller, to be honest. But yeah, the movement. I think a lot of Western RPGs don't have the same quality of movement that JRPGs do. Like, yeah, I feel like when you play like Nier Automata or a Souls game or Death Stranding and stuff, the locomotion and general movement around the world feels so much better than most Western third-person games that feel more animation heavy. Yeah. And what was something, a decision, a gameplay change, a character's writing that the games did and you wish they didn't? I wish that Cerberus, I wish that alternatively, what was something that that you expected the games would do, but that didn't end up happening. I just wish Cerberus didn't have such a prominent role in the third game, and I guess the third game is so human centric. I guess that's one of the biggest things that I didn't like. It felt less like a galaxy-wide game and more like a human game, which is really not what I feel like the whole series has been about. We had lots of input with the various races, but it still felt very human-centric, very alliance-centric, whereas, I mean, the first game and the second game in particular, even though we were working for Cerberus, which is a human-first organization, they felt very separate from Earth and in humanity. So I really wish that the games didn't force Cerberus into focus as much as they did in the third game. It just reeked of of rushed development, which it was, to be fair. But yeah, something that I expected they do, but it didn't end up happening. Interesting question. What that I expected they would do, but didn't end up happening. I think I felt like maybe we would get to spend more time in hub worlds. You know, like maybe we'd get to go to Thessia and spend like time there, kind of like in the second game we got to spend a bit more time on Ilos? Ilos was where Vigil was, and I can't remember. Was it Ilos? Anyway, where Liara was as the Shadow Broker. I felt like we were maybe going to get some more hub locations. I think one of the things that I ended up not enjoying as much, and remember, again, this is a game from 2 generations ago, so I understand. But maybe I felt like after playing the first game and all the kind of Mako exploration that we did, I felt like maybe the games would have built on that a bit, and we would get to explore more fleshed out worlds. Do you know what I mean? That would have better hub locations and cities that we could visit and explore a bit. And I think the first game made me expect that the open world elements would be expanded, whereas they really reined that in and made it more linear, level based, and we spent a lot more time on the Normandy than I maybe wanted. And that kind of formula of always being on the Normandy could get a little bit repetitive, but so I think the first game made me think like, oh, they'll progress the planet exploration, and we'll get to and it'll be more detailed. There'll be actual proper side quests on some of these worlds, and it didn't go that way at all in the second and third games. Okay, you can avoid this one if you want. What themes across the games and characters did you enjoy reflecting on the most? For example, the survival of the fittest, racism, the function of morality, the atrocities of war, artificial intelligence, and what makes life, etc. Games aren't great at handling all these topics, in my opinion, but they give you something to think about. I mean, all the examples I enjoyed. I mean, in particular, AI, atrocities of war with the genophage. Those two were definitely ones that we discussed quite thoroughly in the comments that I found the most interesting. I think that, like I said, I think the AI stuff in the game, because it does tie into the Reapers as well, they were a bit all over the place at times with it, but it was also great to engage in. So yeah, I really liked that. I think with Edie being like a real intimate presence, Legion 2 in the second game, for as long as we had him, definitely brought those questions into focus quite a bit more. So yeah, I love AI stuff anyway. Yeah, fluctuating moralities was definitely something that came up with the Genophage stuff. Definitely. Issues of racism, sure. Yeah, definitely. I mean, with Ashley, you've got to consider it, right? Yeah. Survival of the fittest. Definitely, it was as a theme maybe came into focus more in the second game, because the first game was a lot more political in terms of its basis for stuff. Wasn't necessarily as much of a theme there, but was more in the second game where we were in a bit more of a wilder environment in the Terminus systems. Yeah, but I always enjoy reflecting on artificial intelligence. I think that just the themes of political structure and stuff, and culture, and like the history of places was one thing that the games did really well. Learning about the lore and history of all the various different races and homeworlds and their customs, their genetics, and how that kind of shaped them as races. I really enjoyed, even like right at the end, when we found the Elcor homeworld and the Vorcha homeworld, we learned pretty like significant things about their cultures that were really interesting. About how the Elcor had 2 capital cities in different parts of the world that they'd migrate to in the different seasons. I mean, how amazing is that? Millions of people move to a new city. Is it like identical and you have like 2 houses? Like that was just amazing to think of. And like how the Vorcha were really difficult to control for the Reapers because they just don't give a toss, and they'll fight you anyway just because sack it. But they were actually really good to re-educate, like to educate from birth, like the Asari found. Yeah, I really enjoyed those kind of themes, just learning about all the different cultures and their kind of heritage and their histories, right? Really, that's one theme that I felt like the game's just nailed. Just the history, the history that was soaked throughout the codex and the conversations. Yeah, definitely. Great questions, my friend. Great questions, Johnny. All right, not exactly a question, but PMG just released a video on YouTube, the inside story of Mass Effect 3's endings finally told. There's interviews with some Bioware developers, which shows what kind of an atmosphere was inside the studio at the time. I'm interested what you think about all of this. Okay, I need to come back to this. I might carry on recording on the second day, so I'll go away and watch that. This video is going to be like 3 hours long, so I'm going to have to record onto a second day anyway, so I'll come back to your question answers. And Amverso. Am I pronouncing that right? I don't want to... So if this is an actual, like, maybe Eastern European name, that would be Amverso, right? I'm going to go with Amverso. That might be wrong. Okay, Deo. If you could change one thing about each game in the trilogy, what would it be? Each game. So the first game, if we're not thinking story-wise, it'd just be the gameplay. Gameplay was just a bit repetitive. The inventory system was a mess. The loot was a mess. It was a bit too easy. So yeah, if I could just import the gameplay from the third game or the second game into the first one, that would be perfect. But I love the first game. The first game, just it's like the kind of Fellowship of the Ring feeling, where it's the beginning of the journey, right? There's so many unanswered questions. There's so much mystery. Everything you read, everything you hear is a learning experience. So I wouldn't really want to change too much about the first game. But yeah, I've changed the gameplay. Second game, besides that bloody mission end screen with the elusive man, I'd definitely change that. That thing did my head in. I hated that. The second game, I definitely had some huge pacing issues with the main story. So, but I mean, I think you have to remember, like in a proper trilogy like this, where all three entries are so closely related and the story runs through each. The second game is always the second title entry in a trilogy of games, films, books, whatever. Is always difficult, man. It's so difficult to bridge because you can't draw too many conclusions, but you can't introduce too many new things. So it's really difficult. So I appreciate that about middle titles. Like, it's really difficult because you don't want to conclude too many things, but it still needs to be a satisfying story. But the pacing of the main story and the collectors and all that stuff was just too. It was too. The end was too loaded up. It was too. The back end was too. Was just too much there. All the side quests were great and stuff, but it just felt like we were learning absolutely nothing about the Reapers throughout the second game. Whereas at the end of the first game, it was like, right, now we go and we learn everything about the Reapers possible. We search for them, all of it, and then nothing. So yeah, the pacing, and there needed to be more Reaper stuff. And they could have concluded a few more arcs in the second game, like the whole thing on Rannoch with the Geth and the Quarians going to war. That could have been in the second game. There's no reason why that necessarily needed to be ended in the third game. I know you needed to win their loyalty, but that could have been concluded there. Something. So yeah, the pacing of the second game is definitely a problem, and the third game, I think the enemies besides the Reaper enemies, we needed some more antagonists, and the Cerberus just weren't good enough, I don't think, as an antagonist. The elusive, I think every single person who played the second game was thoroughly sick of the elusive man by the end, and having him have such a big presence in the third game was just a pain in the arse at times. So I feel like we just needed. I mean, the Batarians were so perfectly set up to be one of the main enemies in the third game, and they just didn't do it. The Batarians were just like there is like an example of what happens when a race is harvested, right? And they were refugees and stuff. So I think the Batarians were there to be used as an enemy, as an indoctrinated enemy. They could have used the whole Batarian fleet, because the Reapers had their home world, they had the politicians in charge. And all they had to do was use the whole destruction of their galaxy by Shepard and humanity as a reason to go to war. That's what I felt like would happen at the end of the second game, to be honest. They could have used the Batarians, they could have used rogue factions from any other race, right? So Cerberus, right, it's just a rogue human faction. So there could have been a rogue Asari faction, a rogue Turian faction, a rogue Solarian faction, a rogue any race faction that would have been more interesting than the Elusive Man and Kai Lang. So ultimately, that's what I would change about the third game. Is I'd change the secondary enemies, because you could have lots of boss fights because you could have had several rogue factions, right? And you could go and take them out, right? Each one, and then that little bit would be done, and it wouldn't feel like it was interfering with the main story in such like an end game way. You could just slowly take out like the Batarian army, and then there'd be a rogue of indoctrinated, a group of rogue Asaris who were indoctrinated. Maybe they'd be interfering some way. You could take them out. You could take out a group of STG who'd been indoctrinated. You could take them out, and it would feel like the Reapers were kind of encroaching on every race a little bit, but just having all Cerberus, it was a bit annoying. So yeah, that's what I'd change. First game, I'd change the gameplay. I wouldn't really change the main game too much, even though that still has pacing issues with the exploration and the main missions, but you're learning everything in the first game. So maybe there'd be stuff I'd change for a second playthrough, but in terms of a first time playthrough, the mystery is glorious in the first game, so I just changed the gameplay. Second game, the pacing of the main story is a big issue for me. They needed to put some more significant developments throughout the story and not just at the tail end. And the third game, Cerberus, I changed the secondary enemy. Reaper's primary enemy, Cerberus secondary enemy. I definitely changed that. I know we fight the Geth a bit, but not much. Great question, Dale. Okay, not Mass Effect related, but what's an on-crate? It probably must be somewhere in the FAQ. Yeah, I get asked this a lot. You probably just can't tell what I'm saying because I don't pronounce T's that well. I do make an effort to pronounce the T in this now so people know what I'm saying. Okay, I've explained this before in the comments to people, but I'll say it here as well because we're only like 3 hours into the video, so... In The Witcher 3, when you go to Skellige, there are different clans, right? My channel is named after Mad Matt Lugos. My name is Mad Matt Lugos. Mad Matt Lugos is bald head with a beard. I look a bit like, well, I don't look like him, but I look like him because of that, I guess. And on the main island, the Mad Matt Lugos is in charge of a clan called Clan Drummond. They're in the south. In the north is a clan called the Clan Crate, right? They're a character who Geralt knows very well. He knows Krakon Crate very well. Spent a lot of time with him when he was younger. And those clans are rivals. The Drummonds and the On-Crates are rivals. So I am a Drummond. That means I don't like the On-Crates. Never trust an On-Crate. Right, I had a little break because I was recording for over like 4 hours. This video is going to be pointlessly, insanely long, but I don't mind. It's all good. Because I wanted to have a think about a couple of the questions that I felt like I didn't answer properly, and I wanted to watch this video here by People Make Games PMG. Anyway, I watched this, so we'll start with this. Why doesn't that say read more? There we go. We'll keep it like that. Yeah. So, having watched the video and seen the kind of the struggle that the studio were going through and what they all thought about the kind of backlash and everything, I guess the first thing is obviously the studio was in kind of perpetual crunch, which is never a good thing for a studio, right? They'd been crunching from Dragon Age 2 through Mass Effect, and then the post-game content for Mass Effect 3 bled into the development of Dragon Age Inquisition, so no one got any rest. And that's probably what's led to the studio having such a high turnover of staff. And we've seen that at lots of other game studios, like I mentioned, CD Projekt Red. I noticed a lot of the developers, some of them that I follow on Twitter, leaving the studio, which was a shame. Same thing happened at Naughty Dog. I mean, the development of The Last of Us Part 2 had a horrendous crunch, apparently, and most of the talent has left that studio as well. It's only really some of the head writers that are left. The majority of the kind of the Naughty Dog talent has gone as well. And it sounds like that's what's happened here. And then I guess the other... So obviously that's not a good thing. I wish EA would have given them more time. They obviously have the financial support to prop delaying release dates, but they care more about hitting their release dates and their bottom line, right? But one of the big issue in the video that it brought up about Mass Effect 3 in particular was to do with the endings and the artistic integrity and the dangers of fans being able to push artists to change their art, essentially, which is one way of looking at it. But so I guess the question was, does it set a dangerous precedent for fans petitioning for something to be changed? Because so the first part of this is that this didn't start a trend of fans changing a creative aspect of a game. I can't really think of any major examples of fans getting an ending or a significant part of the story added to or changed. And the only other thing I can maybe think of was the backlash that this EA again, but this was to do with loot boxes with the Star Wars game, the second one, where everyone complained a lot about the monetization and the loot boxes, and they actually changed that. I think Disney probably made them change it because of the backlash. So I can't think of any big examples similar to this, so that really only leads you to the conclusion that the ending was so bad that it was almost just, obviously the harassment of the developers is never justified. You know, things can have bad elements in them. Lots of other things that I like, whether they're books, films or games, have elements that you wish that they would that would be changed. But having seen the original endings, they were objectively, at the very least, unsatisfactory, and at the worst, they were just... At the worst, they were just bad. I don't want to use too much hyperbole, so... but a lot of the Bioware staff still said we shouldn't change it, but I guess the main difference between this and other creative visions, like a novelist or something, is that I guess a game studio has a lot more moving parts than some other creative expressions. So, and from the sounds of the kind of mini documentary that PMG did, go and check that video out. I'll leave a link in a stamp here. Not a timestamp, in a... how rubbish of a YouTuber am I? I can't even think what it's called. The little thing in the corner. But and now I've completely lost my train of thought. Oh, Matt, what are you doing with your life? Yeah, the moving parts. Things. It sounded like things got kind of... There was some confusion, and due to the rushed nature of the development of the third game, I think that you could say that it resulted in a better product, a better ending, and they didn't really change the ending. They just added to it. And you know, on the one side you could say, well, that's the fault of the person playing the game, that they didn't spend enough time interpreting the ending and the implications, and all the information might have been there already, they just needed to implement it themselves. But I do think that the endings were very unsatisfactory, because if you're gonna do just a declarative choice ending like that didn't really have much influence from the choices across the series, then I think they needed to be more detailed and more bespoke from each other. So I think it's fair enough, and saying that it sets a dangerous precedent I think is a little disingenuous. I mean, how director's cuts, extended cuts have existed in film for a long time, you know? I mean, how many... There's like 5 different cuts of Blade Runner, and obviously that's not necessarily led by the fans, that was led by the director and studio interference, but it's the same kind of thing, right? It's the vision being changed in some way due to some kind of external influence. And I think for them to offer it for free shows that a lot of people within the studio probably thought that, yeah, it was kind of... They did kind of shortchange the players a little bit with how the ending was done. So it was a very interesting video. It's a good insight into the, I don't know, the horrendous conditions in which a lot of game developers have to work under, and hopefully this next 10 years of game development will see a move away from this kind of thing, as studios are rightfully pressured to just give people, you know, just a proper job that finishes when it finishes, that they don't have to do constant overtime, that they're not pressured into doing overtime to get extensions to their contracts for the next game that they're going to develop. Yeah, but I think that the last decade really was a decade of crunch, because I think because with the development in and graphical technology and everything, games just became so much more expansive in the last 10 years. And the development just became so much more exhaustive, right? So it kind of reached a breaking point, and now I think a lot of the real talent, or not the talent, sorry, a lot of the more experienced talent that made a lot of these legendary games are breaking away now, and they're going back to being independent. You've seen it with a lot of people who worked at Blizzard, right? They formed their own independent studio. Yeah, and I think a lot of these experienced developers who are kind of 40 and over are avoiding these big AAA companies, and they're maybe trying to create their own companies that are private companies that can't be bought in the way that Bioware was bought, in the way that like Bethesda's just been bought, and etc. And just trying to make a product at a normal pace, and that probably means some of these games will take like 5+ years to make, and I don't really mind if it means if these developers get a proper work-life balance. But I don't think that the adding to of the Mass Effect 3 ending set a dangerous precedent. I just think that they didn't realize how unsatisfactory the ending was, and that was a direct consequence of the rushed development of the game, and ultimately I blame EA for that. It's very easy to just blame EA for everything, but I do blame EA for that. I think that that's perfectly fair. If they were just given more time, they could have ironed it out a lot better. So it's EA's fault. And a couple of other questions I just wanted to think about a bit more. Yeah, so this question here, weakest part of the trilogy in terms of like a thing that runs all the way through, and I had to think about this. And what I'd say is actually one of the weakest parts, I guess, is just the overemphasis of the role of humanity. I guess I think is one of the weakest parts, considering that human beings have been a presence in intergalactic or interplanetary politics and whatever for less than 100 years, or is it? Yeah, less than 100 years. I think that we just had too big of a role. I think it was blown out of proportion a bit. I think, particularly in the third game. Obviously, the third game is extremely human-centric, but it's definitely. I think it's kind of less so in the first game, as we're kind of the first human spectre and making all that progress. I like that feel of being a little bit more, not being the biggest fish kind of feeling. Whereas, you know, obviously by the third game we're like the biggest hope of the galaxy and everything. But yeah, I'd say that the overemphasis on the role of humanity, I feel like some credit could have been shared around a bit more. Yeah, that's probably one of the weakest parts in terms of a recurring theme, particularly with like the Elusive Man. If someone like the Elusive Man could spring up and rise to power in that short a period of time within the galactic, within the galactic sphere, right? You would feel like there would be a Turian organization like that, or definitely a Solarian one, and definitely an Asari. Maybe not Turian, because Turians are a bit more nationalistic. But we did read about Turian colonies who wanted to be separate from the political rule of Palaven and everything. So I think it would be perfectly reasonable for there to be, rogue factions from a lot of the major races, the Solarians in particular, right? Because we know that they like to kind of instigate from the background and the shadows. And the Asari have been around for so long. Someone like Arya, I guess Arya is similar to the Elusive Man, just in a slightly less maniacal way. But someone trying to pull the strings like this, and probably just humans being a bit too important when they didn't really have any right to be. And I really tried to think of a better answer for this question here, Wesley. I really did. I think overall, I think one way that that Shepard as an individual character and not as a player avatar could have been improved would just be to add a bit more vulnerability and a bit more, a bit more of an individual in terms of little things, likes, dislikes, preferences, just small things, that would make you feel a little bit more distinct and not just defined in big things, but defined with small things as well. I always want that in characters a lot more. It's one of the reasons why I really enjoy Geralt so much, is because particularly if you read the books, like, you know, but he's got lots of things that, you know, like little things that he likes, he doesn't like, and you know, and you see, you know, him get defeated plenty of times. You know that he's not kind of this all-conquering invincible hero. And I think they tried to do that a few times with Shepard, like when we were talking to Liara in our quarters about the, you know, the bullet ricocheting off our helmet. It was an attempt at that. And when we got defeated by Kai Leng, you know, we're not invincible, we got defeated there, but that was a bit unsatisfactory. But things like that, I think, would have made us seem a little bit more real, rather than just kind of hitting home runs all the time, or always doing the right thing, or always doing a thing that resulted in progress, you know. Things kind of going wrong a bit more in that kind of way might have developed us as a character a bit more. It would have given things a bit of an edge in conversation, where people could throw things in our face, decisions that we'd made that had led to mistakes and so on. So yeah, probably that. But that's a problem with a lot of longer games with a single lead, with a major lead protagonist, is that, you know, they just feel a bit OP in the scope of the world, particularly in the scope of the entire galaxy like this. Yeah. But yeah. All right, guys. That's the Q&A. Thank you for your questions. They've been great. There's a lot of stuff here that I would never have thought of talking about. So now I'm just going to move on to everything, just a little summary, really, because this is going to be the last video of the Mass Effect trilogy. Obviously, I'll probably play Mass Effect Andromeda at some point. After watching the trailer, I am actually quite intrigued, dangerously intrigued. But I'll temper my expectations. But I like spin-offs. I think when you have a story of this scope, I think spin-offs that are a little bit more focused, perhaps, are actually can actually be really enjoyable. So I think in terms of like a little mini review summary and things that, you know, maybe I just feel like I need to say. I mean, I really enjoyed. I think that the voice acting quality throughout the series has been kind of top notch. I can't really think, besides maybe Kelly, I can't really think of any performances that were like wooden or video gamey. I think that the level of performance in the voice acting was stellar throughout all three games, considering, you know, maybe that the first game was, you know, outside of EA when Bioware were independent. You know, they deserve a lot of credit for the talent that they managed to recruit for the game. You know, a lot of the cast were already there in the first game, so really helped maintain a level of immersion with such a high level of voice acting. I enjoyed most of the music throughout. I think some of you are more into the music than maybe I was. I think I enjoyed the music in the somber moments a lot more than maybe the exhilarating moments. I know for a fact that I've listened to the music that was playing during Mordin's death, during Legion's scene as well. There's like a 20-second bit in that bit with Legion that just really gets me here. The little bit that played just after we negotiated the truce and Legion said he'd need to sacrifice himself. There's like a 20-second bit of the music there that's just absolutely stunning. But I really enjoyed the score overall. The score is really deep across all the games. They did a really extensive score. And yeah, it picks up in all the right moments. And yeah, it was great. I really enjoyed the sound design. I'm just bringing this up first because I always feel like sound design doesn't get talked about enough in games, and where it is really important. I feel like the sound design in the weapons was actually really good. There was like a good thwack to a lot of the guns. I think, and although I'm not like I've never fired. I've gone clay pigeon shooting like 3 times in my life, but I've never fired a handgun or a rifle or anything. I've only fired like a what is it, a shotgun? I don't even know. But yeah, they all had a really good piercing sound. You really don't want the guns to sound too muted. And and some of the kind of more alien guns, like Javik's gun, for example, had really, really cool sounds to them. Like the punch of the Prothean gun, and as it kind of picked up as it built damage up, that had a really cool sound to it. And yeah, the sound design overall was fantastic. I think, especially in a sci-fi game, the sound design is really key to certain things feeling alien, and certain things, finding a balance, mechanical, and like the sound of the Reapers as well was great. And yeah, sound design is just such an important part of games, right? Because you spend so much time in them. It's really key to being immersed, and I think they nailed the sound design at more or less every turn. I can't think, like I said, other than Kelly being like just weirding me out. That might have just been the way she was supposed to have been, to be honest. But everyone else was great. So yeah, excellent sound design. In terms of the whole look and feel of the game, like it was really good. I think that there were lots. I understand that this is 2 generations ago now, but there were still lots of really impressive vistas at a distance. This isn't an open world game in that sense, but there were plenty of beautiful places that we got to visit. Like Thessia in the background was great. I wish we would have got to go to Palaven. It was definitely interesting going down to Sakesh, seeing everything in the background there. Yeah, there were lots of really nice vistas. And yeah, the story overall, I think that the shining light here for me was just the lore, just the history, right? That just the feeling that stuff had actually happened previously to our story, right? There were so many little bits of history and culture throughout the codex, throughout eavesdropping on conversations of minor characters, the planet descriptions, so many bits of history and lore and culture and science scattered throughout the game, and it just gave you such a great sense of this galaxy and everything it had been through, whether it was stuff about ancient Asaris or the emergence of the Turians during the Krogan rebellions, or like the mating rituals of all the various different races, and even right up until the end I was still learning stuff. In that last planet scanning episode where we visited the Vorcha homeworld and the Elcor homeworld, we learned really fascinating things about the way that they worked as a species on their home planet. The Hanar being this kind of really almost quite mysterious, because they were not the only aquatic species. I realized that the Leviathans were an aquatic species, but so like the Drell, so many different cultures that were swirling around, and then that leads into a lot of the political themes that were really interesting to learn about. You often compared a lot of the cultures to various different human cultures in the past, and yeah, all that stuff was really the driving force behind my enjoyment of this whole experience. Besides the main story. It made it so easy to get immersed, and that's what you need in an RPG like this. You want to feel really small right? And I know I said that we felt a bit too important in the scope of the galaxy, but you felt when you have, like, particularly in the first and second games, whenever you learned stuff about the Reapers, you felt so small and insignificant, and that's a really important thing to achieve in a grand sci-fi experience, right? That you're just a speck at the end of the day. And it was great in terms of how I enjoyed the main story. I mean, it has elements that, you know, that I'm sure a lot of you have your problems with, like Cerberus, like the human centric nature of the third game, like the kind of weird pacing of the second game, like the kind of how we're kind of dismissed, our ideas are dismissed too much in the first game by the council, maybe. But overall, I think I was always kind of really interested in where the story was going, the mystery of it. I think if a story is good, really, it gets me hypothesizing. And a lot of my favorite sci-fi does that to me. I don't remember feeling like this in a sci-fi game since Nier Automata, and obviously I deleted that playthrough, but I love that game, and that was a similar thing there where you felt like you were so close to getting things, to understanding things, but really most of the time you were a mile away, and that's what I experienced here. It was a fantastic experience in that sense. The characters, you know, we had a real smorgasbord. God, I hate that. I hate saying that, but we had a really good variety. I know some of you have said that the human characters were kind of intentionally written a bit bland, which is a bit of a shame. Although we'd still got Miranda, although Miranda is a bit of a anomaly because she's like a genetically engineered, like test tube baby essentially, right? So she's not really like a normal human, like I guess Caden and Ashley and James and Jacob were, who were, you know, Earthborn, I guess. But, you know, Caden lived as a bit of an outcast. He struggled a lot after he got kind of sent to his biotic boot camp, essentially. Be interesting to see. It would be interesting for me to replay and keep Caden alive and explore his backstory a bit more in the third game. Obviously, it wouldn't be in the second game too much, but yeah, a great cast of characters. And I guess, like I just said, the only problem was maybe some boring human squad mates, but the rest of them, most of them were great. Only maybe really the DLC characters from the second game were a bit hollow. Kasmi and Zaid, they had their quirks, and I really liked Zaid's voice actor and I liked his flavour, but they didn't have as much depth as most of the other characters. But yeah, the rest of the cast were great. They had their own character arcs. I think Rex in the first, I really liked Rex in the first game because he was going through a real struggle, you know, kind of couldn't go back home because of what happened with his father, the kind of nihilism of which was a consequence of the genophage. And I guess that kind of flies in the face of the Krogan, right, with their long lifespans, but they can't have their own children and all that kind of stuff. I really liked the position he was in the first game. It was a shame that obviously with those 2 years while we were dead, we didn't get to see how he kind of reclaimed the throne onto Chanka. That was kind of an important part of his arc that we didn't miss. But I do quite like time jumps and stuff. Tali's arc was great. It's weird thinking back to Tali in the first game. She was so kind of innocent and naive, and she was just so young. She was like an 18-year-old, right? And it really does feel like that's why I appreciated the time jump, because we can kind of really reflect on the character arcs. I already mentioned about the Ara's character arc as well. It was impressive how they turned Garrus around, because I thought Garrus was a little bit he wasn't fleshed out too well in the first game. He felt a little bit one-dimensional, and then they really turned him around. Like his whole epic kind of vigilante life as Archangel created this shepherd-like aura around him, right? Which he was pretty much our equal for most of the series after that, which I really enjoyed. We always had like a good level of banter with Garrus, but it never felt like cheesy or egotistical. It was just right, you know. It wasn't like it was with James, with Garrus. The light-hearted bits and the serious bits, they always kind of had the right tone. And I really enjoyed his arc, the struggle he went through in the second game with his squad dying and him feeling responsible for that. I really enjoyed Joker as well. I know early on in the game I said he was a bit annoying because of the kind of, I don't know what you'd call it. Personally, I'd call that like American sarcasm, just kind of hits you on the nose a bit at times. But Jeff was great, and his whole story with Edie and the emergence of their relationship was great to watch and witness and play a part in. You know, I really enjoyed Edie's development, and I guess maybe that's one regret I had is giving a bit too much credence to the way that the story was talking about AI, and maybe I should have just given all the credence to our experiences with AI in the game, with Edie and with the Geth, with Legion. But Edie developed really well. She posed a lot of interesting questions for us to discuss about the nature of her intelligence, and I really enjoyed her. The second game, that kind of, it felt like a bit like more of a wild ride, you know, in the Terminus systems with our kind of expendable bunch of rogues, right? I do really like that element. I like that it has a much of a different feel to it, because the middle game in a trilogy is so difficult to do, right? In a proper trilogy, it's so difficult to do, because I think I've mentioned this already, but you've got to bridge the games, but you've got to have your own. It struggled a bit drawing its own conclusions, but it definitely had its own atmosphere and vibe with the kind of, you know, band of rogues all coming together, which was its strongest element, right? I did enjoy the struggle of Grunt. At first I was a bit worried he was going to be a bit boring, but he actually turned out to be a really cool character. He had his own struggle at first, trying to find his identity, and then he ends up kind of just being like a typical kind of teenager, right? Boisterous teenager, almost kind of what they wanted James to be, but he has a bit more to him, I suppose. And I've already spoken about Legion and Mordin and why I love them so much. Definite favorite characters. Miranda I really enjoyed Miranda's backstory. Her struggle had such a tangible like loneliness at the center of it that, you know, it really got to me, I guess, at times, because she really had nobody, and that's really what her struggle was. And she developed this kind of hard, prickly exterior. I mean, I was pretty unimpressed by her at first, but that's what it's like when someone's like that. And I really enjoyed her story. Am I missing someone major? Like I said, I've already spoken about Legion and Liara and Mordin. Yeah, and you know, Ashley had some good elements to her backstory. It was mostly to do with her family and the kind of history of her family name and stuff. But yeah, the characters were great. I really enjoyed it. And then, yeah, a lot of the themes, a lot of the things it brings up were always great to discuss. Some passionate discussions that I had with you guys. We didn't always agree on certain matters, but that's all part of the fun, right? You know, touched on a lot of different themes in sci-fi. And I guess the kind of Reapers, as the story of the Reapers, right? As good as it was, I suppose, I think you guys have mentioned it, but in the comments, but I suppose that the problem with the Reapers was the consistency of the message from the Reapers, I suppose, was a difficulty throughout, in a way. I'm not sure what I'm trying to say, but I guess that's why the ending became a little difficult because it was tough to nail down the Reapers as for what they were in some ways. But the Reapers were a great enemy. I mean, thinking back to how it felt to meet Sovereign for the first time in the first game, it felt chilling, right? It felt so intimidating. It felt, again, made us feel so small, made us feel so powerless. And yeah, that image of Sovereign coming down on the Citadel was fascinating. And obviously in that PMG video, one of the developers spoke about, instead of it being the AI, it was going to be something. It was the Reaper Queen, which would have been an interesting thing to mess with instead, and it was going to be kind of a conversation in cyberspace as opposed to on top of the Citadel. But the Reapers, you know, they had an aura and a history. Again, a history to them. Again, the history was probably the thing that the game probably does the best. And because you found little traces of their influence and previous cycles scattered throughout the galaxy so many times, it built up the mystique of their power. And that was, you know, the mystique wasn't even a lie. It wasn't even an exaggeration as to their power. Yeah, it was great. In terms of the gameplay, I mean, I've said already that, you know, third-person shooters aren't always my bag, because I grew up playing like turn-based games and slower games. So when I have to play a faster-paced game, I tend to be a bit better with melee combat and stuff. Something like Sekiro, where it's really fast, but because it's hand-to-hand, I'm closer to the enemy. Whereas I can't always, because this has a tactical element to it with repositioning and controlling the squad mates. I'm capable of thinking tactically, just not fast. So I apologise if my gameplay was a little frustrating, but I got through all the games on hard, right? I really enjoyed playing as an engineer. The gameplay in the first game was a little bit more repetitive, but they refined it and they nailed it a lot more in the second and third games, and I still really enjoyed it. Although if I was playing, I think if I play Andromeda, I will maybe go for a melee class or a biotic class or something that is a bit more tanky, and I'll play with a controller, I think. And you guys have said that the combat in Andromeda is probably is the most fun part of the whole game. Yeah, but I did enjoy the gameplay. I liked having my little crew of engineer extras. You know, we had Ava, we had Bill, we had Mouse, and it was nice throwing them out there. And yeah, I enjoyed the gameplay, even though I'm not necessarily comfortable with third-person shooter stuff. I guess the only thing that going back to something that maybe I didn't like across the series, it wasn't in the first game obviously, but I didn't like the interrupts. I absolutely despised the interrupts. It just, I guess I would have found it a bit easier with a controller, but because I still don't particularly like playing mouse and keyboard for non-strategy games. My instinct is always just to take my hands away just for a second and just chill while we're in a cutscene or having a conversation. So to have to react in conversations, I really wasn't a fan of that. But it is what it is. I understand why they did it. They wanted to kind of add pressure to decisions and time-based decisions, but I don't think that's why people play RPGs, particularly slower RPGs like this that want you to kind of contemplate things and read codex entries and planet entries and think of a million different things before you actually give a response to someone. So yeah, the interrupts weren't my favourite thing. God, are they in Andromeda? I don't know. But yeah, I can't think of anything else, guys. That has been my experience with the Mass Effect trilogy. It's been an unforgettable experience. I've loved it from start to finish. Each game was its own entity, and the way it all ties together comes together as just a great experience. It's not a perfect experience, but it's a fantastically ambitious experience, and you whatever mistakes it made, I think you can ultimately pin them on EA for making them rush development. You know, whatever it was, 18 months, 2 years from the release of 2 to 3 is just obscene. So the fact that they pulled it off in as many ways as they did is just fantastic, and I'll never forget the history of this Milky Way. I'll remember a lot of the little weird intricacies I'm sure will pop into my head at the strangest moments. Maybe I'll replay it one day. I'll replay it as Male Shepherd. I'll do some more renegade things. I'll romance someone else, and I'll see how different the galaxy looks at the end. But I can't really say much more about it. This video is probably about 4 hours long. If you made it this far, then thanks, guys. Thanks for making this experience what it was. I'm a little sad now that it's actually all over. I don't know what to do with myself. So, it's been great. Next, we're going to be playing Echoes of the Eye in Outer Wilds next, but I don't know why I'm bringing that up now, but yeah. Thanks for coming along with me on this journey, guys. It's been a special experience, one that you have enhanced greatly with your input, with your chat, with your theories, with all the knowledge that you guys have about this series that enhanced all the things that I was learning along the way. So thank you for that. That's why I enjoy uploading playthroughs, because you get to experience things together, right? And yeah, it's been great. So thank you for joining me through the Mass Effect trilogy. Hopefully some of you will join me for Mass Effect Andromeda whenever I play it. Maybe 3 or 4 playthroughs down the line, I'll get to it. I'm actually quite looking forward to just seeing what it's like. Whether if I end up hating it or not, I don't know. We'll see. But thanks for everything. I hope you've enjoyed this series. Please leave me a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Maybe consider checking out one of my other playthroughs. If this is the kind of only series of mine that you've watched, I've got a whole kind of sci-fi cyberpunk playlist that we started at the start of the year that will touch on some similar themes that we did in Mass Effect. So yeah, I guess I'll see you at some point soon, guys. Just remember, everyone, never trust an uncrate. See you soon.